Presentation of This Old House is made possible by Weyerhaeuser.
This old house. If you've been watching for the last 6 weeks, you know that we've been involved in redoing part of an old Cape Cod-style house that was too small. We took part of the back roof off and put in a shed dormer, and we created a nice master bedroom, suite, and bath. The interesting thing was that we involved the owners. The young couple who bought the house also provided a lot of their own talent and time, sweat equity, which is the thing that really makes lots of these projects feasible. Well, now we're ready to show you our second candidate right over here. Again, we're looking at a tired 55-year-old house. This one, architect designed, lots of nice features to it, and it's a good solid brick house. The young couple that bought it have one small problem with it. They need more space. Let's meet them and take a little bit of a tour. Hello?
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Fine.
Well, tell me first off, how long have you been in the house now?
We've been here about 3 months now.
Just 3 months?
Yes.
So you have managed to do some prettying up, like the garden and the plants and so forth.
Yes, but we had to put a few things around just to make it look lived in for us.
This is not a starter home for you, though, right?
No, this is our second home. We were in our first home about 9 years. We needed to find something that was a little bit more solidly built and a little bit more room. The other house was hard to add on to.
Okay. Now, the condition of this house was not exactly A+, though, right?
No, it needed a lot of care. When we came and looked on the outside, it needs a lot of paint, and it had a lot of dry rot. And the bushes were quite overgrown. You couldn't even see the brickwork.
So you've already ripped everything out
yes,
from around
we did.
here.
We wanted to clean up for the fall.
It's an interesting house, though. It has a good deal of character.
Yes, it does.
The overhangs up here are something to be happy about.
It adds quite the English character to the house.
Well, it also will protect you from the downpours that we tend to get in October and November.
Yes, it does. It stops the washouts from the garden.
Yeah. So what's happening over here on your front steps?
We tried to just patch the steps, and we found out that they should be ripped all the way down now. So that's what we're involved in doing. We've had to call someone in to help us. So hopefully that'll be done in a couple of weeks before the winter sets in.
Definitely need some help.
Yes, they do.
For a front doorway, it's a very nice one, you know.
Yes, it has a lot of detail work to it.
That's what you call a broken pediment with a scroll?
Yes, it is.
Kind of a Dutch design feature.
Yes.
There's a nice light here, probably the original one.
We're hoping to have that rebrassed. We have to take that down.
Do you only have a storm door? I don't see any door in there.
Yes, the front door we had to send out to be stripped. It had about 10 layers of paint, and it had the old lead glass on the top. So we'd like to keep the door.
Sure, absolutely.
It adds character to the home.
What's happening over here?
Over here, we got involved in doing some column work. We had hoped it was only dry rot in a few columns, but realized it was carpenter ants. So we decided, since we got involved, we did them all at once.
And this is meant to be a screen porch,
Yes, it's a summer porch, and it's quite nice, and we have the screens being rescreened now.
Okay, so you'll probably be all set by the time winter gets here.
Yes,
it's a beautiful,
just the time to come out.
Beautiful side yard you've got.
Yes, it's small, but yet it's an English-style gardens, and hopefully with the brickwork we're going to put in next spring, we'll put all the perennials in the landscaping.
Now, behind you, when I look at this facade, that would scare off a lot of buyers. I mean, those clapboards up there look pretty awful.
Yes, in fact, when we came to look at the house, there were a couple of young couples before us going through the homes, and the remarks were they were scared of the outside. My husband and I knew it was just a lot of paint peeling and dry rot. So we had a carpenter come out and help us decide which clapboards had to be replaced. And then the major thing was finding the 10-inch clapboards.
Yes, not an easy material to find.
No, but we had called all around, and we did find them right here in the local area, which was quite nice.
What about the roof shingles? Are they new?
The roof is about 5 years old, we were told. It's in pretty good shape. We had it checked out when we first moved in.
So you probably don't have to worry about that.
Very well, yes.
I notice you have copper gutters, but they don't look too terrific.
No, they've been banged up. When whoever did the roof and other work on the house, they would just set the ladders up against it. So they're in bad shape. They're not leaking, but we probably will take them down and think of something else to put up right now to neaten up the edge of the house.
Generally a good solid house, but it needs a lot of cosmetic work.
Yes, it does.
How about the inside? Can we take a look?
Sure, come on in. Come into the living room, Bob.
Oh, it's a nice size.
Yes, it's quite light and airy with all the windows. And
Nice mantelpiece,
Yes.
good-sized fireplace.
And we were quite sold on the bookcases in this room.
Yeah.
Gave us extra storage and
Yeah.
places to show things.
You've already been doing some work in here, though.
Yes, we have. We put all new ceilings in the first floor.
And the wallpaper's been stripped down.
Yes, we're starting to.
What about the floors? Have you refinished them?
We did when we moved in. They seem to be in pretty good condition.
Nice oak. Best kind of floor to
Yes.
have, yeah.
Yes.
And here we have our center entrance hall.
Yes.
Very nice staircase with the mahogany handrail and the volute.
Really nice detailing.
Hi,
how are you?
This is my husband, Ben.
Bob Vila.
Nice to meet you, Bob.
Nice house you got here.
Thank you. Has Debbie given you a tour?
Well, we're just getting started, really.
Oh, what do you think so far?
Oh, it's a very nice house.
Great, great. Have you seen the lavatory?
No.
What did
yeah.
I show you to? It's one of my pet projects.
What have you got going in here?
Well, we were impressed with the unique style of the sink and how
Yes.
well maintained it was, and it's original to the house.
Mm-hmm.
I took the old fixtures, had them de-chromed and lacquered, and I think it looks just right.
They're beautiful, yeah. No, a lot of people make the mistake of getting rid of an old lavatory sink like that and trying to modernize it, and that's the best
They do,
thing
but
you
we
can
saved
do.
an awful lot of money by doing it this way.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you've got a nice entrance hall here, too. And how many rooms in the house all told?
There are 7.
7-room house. That's not bad. Yeah. And a formal dining room.
Yes.
Yes, we enjoy a dining room.
Mm-hmm. Nice detailing in here also. Those corner cupboards are
Yes,
real special.
we were very impressed by the curved glass, too, on the top of them. And it gives me extra storage down below.
Sure, they're very New England.
It's something we would have had to have done in the other house, but this makes it nice.
In the house you were living in previously, you were
Previously.
planning on doing that?
Exactly the same.
Well, you got it all set here.
Here's our kitchen, Bob.
Oh, this is very nice.
As you see, it's a little bit outmoded, but
Well, here's something I like from 50-year-old houses, the kind of the breakfast nook.
It's quite nice for the
We
children in
enjoy
the
it.
morning.
Sure, it's very nice.
The
What
cabinets
about
are
the
original.
cabinets? You figure they're original?
we're fairly certain they're original. They're wood. We plan on having them stripped.
Yes.
And do a minor
Yes.
facelift, cosmetic in here only.
Sure. Eventually you can change the color of the countertops if you're
Absolutely.
crazy about it and that sort of thing. How about upstairs?
Fine, I'll be glad to show you right now.
Okay. You know, I'm impressed. It seems like you're tackling every project in the place, from stripping wallpaper to refinishing wood and so forth.
We are doing quite a bit. Actually, I think it is that we're fearless. If we had thought about some of these projects and how long they may take, we might not have jumped in so fast. But we'll try anything once.
Sure, that's the only way to learn. Well, where do we get started here?
How about the bedroom?
Sure. It's big?
It's big,
Yes.
a lot of windows,
Yes.
and bright.
Well, it's right over the living room, and it's about the same size as the living room.
Same dimensions, yes.
It's terrific. What do you have out through there?
We have a door to a sun deck
Right
that
over
we're
the
working
screen
on now.
porch.
Yes,
That'll need a little work, but eventually that could be a nice little retreat in the summer.
yes.
Place to read a
Quite
book.
nice.
We have plenty of closet space up here, which we like.
This is unusual.
Very unusual, a sink in the bedroom.
Yes.
We think it's original to the house. It was in terrible condition.
So what have you done with it?
We had it re-enameled by a company that specializes in doing this.
Refinishing the porcelain.
Refinishing the porcelain.
Do they guarantee that kind of work?
They do give a guarantee.
Yes,
And
for
what
a
did, you,
year.
what did you pay to have it done?
About $70.
About 70.
That's well worth it.
Definitely
Yeah.
worth it.
And what have you done in here?
Here's the bath.
The bath,
again
we've done the same.
Another sink that you also had refinished?
Yes.
added new faucets to this one. And we
And
had
the
the tub
tub we
done.
had refinished also.
It looks beautiful.
It does.
It's
And-
very sensible because the cost of new plumbing fixtures.
Astronomical.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
And it
right.
also meant getting involved with the tile work, which we didn't want to do at this point.
So there's nothing left to do in here except cosmetic.
Cosmetic and
That's
decorating,
right.
that's
Yeah.
it.
That's right.
Change
Very
the
good.
color scheme, perhaps.
And this door here leads back off to the hall.
Back into the hall. Why do you suppose they have 2 doors on the bathroom?
Well, there are 4 bedrooms and only 1 bathroom on this
Oh.
floor, so some compromises had to be made.
Okay, yeah.
Here's our
And-
daughter's room.
Very nice.
Nice, airy, large.
I love this kind of room, though, with the dormers and the eaves
We do,
lines
too.
and everything. It'll be real pretty when you get the wallpapers up.
But as you can see, with the child and toys, it starts to crowd in.
Yeah,
Gets cluttered.
yeah. And so there's 2 more rooms up here.
This is our son's room.
It's a small room.
Smallest,
Yes, it is.
smallest of the
You
bedrooms.
got a small son.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, though, you can see with furniture in the room, with the toys, we're getting closed in. And this is what we don't want.
But then you've got an extra room.
We do.
Yes,
we have
we
a TV room, a den.
Oh, well, this is terrific.
Small. Here's where we spend most of our time, though.
So what's the problem? Why do you need another playroom?
I don't enjoy coming upstairs to sit down and watch TV or read. I prefer something away from the children.
Yeah. You
And-
need the privacy.
Yeah.
Also
Very-
for a guest room.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you could
And-
use this for a guest room.
Yes.
In a sewing room of that nature, and then we can have a playroom where we can allow the children to play without afraid of scratching the floors and damaging things.
Looks like
And
the basement is your only
it's the
alternative.
only other room we have.
Why don't we go take a look?
Fine, be glad to show you.
If you don't mind, boys, I think I'm going to have to run on an errand.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, you've got a good set of stairs for starters.
We do.
And the first thing that I notice is that you've got lots of headroom down here, so that's a big plus.
It is a plus. We have a dry basement, too.
Why don't you give me a little bit of a tour of what
Fine,
you've got
I will.
down here?
Bob, over here is our heating system. It's fairly new, less than a year old.
Looks brand new, yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons we bought the house.
I don't blame you.
Over behind this wall here, we have the laundry room.
Mhm.
Has a washer, dryer, and a soapstone sink.
Super.
Fine as it is.
And a nice little workshop in here.
Small. I will be elaborating on it at a further time.
Well, at least you got a nice bench. and
Somewhere
so-
to work.
Yeah, lots of tools. And this is it, right?
This is the room. This is what we want to try and work with.
You've got plumbing, you've got an old toilet in here.
We
already.
do. We do.
Working shape and everything, right?
We're pretty sure it works fine.
Oh, that's a nice
So
plus.
we'd like to update this.
Well, sure, yeah.
Okay. And over here, Bob, we have the base of the fireplace. We would have liked to have put a fireplace in down here. Unfortunately, we find out it can't be done.
Why?
One flue coming down, and the cost of doing it would be prohibitive.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to spend that much money. What's in here?
This is a storage closet. Good size, well organized, but especially it's a window.
It's got a nice window in there.
Right,
And
and
that's
we need
something
light.
that you really have to consider when you're building down
Absolutely.
below ground like this. Well, then you'd probably want to remove this wall and just forget about this storage closet and
I think so.
have storage elsewhere.
I think so.
Got a nice window the same size over here.
Light will be very important down
You know,
here.
you paint those window wells white so that they reflect a lot of the light in here.
Right.
And, you know, it helps also. This is going to be a problem.
Yes, it is. Our oil storage tank, it's ugly.
Mhm.
It takes up space, especially being horizontal.
Have you called a plumber in yet?
Yes, I have. I've called Mike Sapino from Sapino Heating.
He's your plumber?
He should be along somewhat shortly to
Oh,
take
good.
a look at this.
Yeah. No, because, I mean, especially on its side like this, it takes up so much room.
Well, also, Bob, there's a problem. Sometimes you smell oil,
Yeah.
and we don't want that. We'd like to move it away from this area here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it probably can be done. I don't know what it would cost. These steel support columns could be a problem also, although...
They can,
structurally-
although they have to be here. We have to hold up the first floor.
Yeah. Well, we have to, you know,
Work
talk
around it.
layout and see
Right.
what could be done with them. This
This
big-
is something.
Yeah, you know, sometimes people will refinish a basement and leave these old heating pipes exposed. But
I don't care for that.
No.
No. I'd like to somehow raise them or move them or do something with them.
Mm-hmm. And if you've always, did somebody have a rec room down here at one point? I see you've got ceiling tiles all over
Apparently
the
they
place.
did. They're mismatched. This we want to get rid of.
There's your
Here's
plumber.
Mike now, the pump.
Good. Well, we've got a number of things to ask him. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Bob.
How are you?
Mike, how are you?
Benny?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We have been discussing the potential for making this into a family room, and we were just talking about you, because this seems to be one of the big problems. What would it take to move an oil storage tank like this to, say, the other end of the house, put it close to the furnace?
Oh, let me take a look. Geez, you're talking cutting these pipes and repiping it and rehooking up the oil line, draining the tank. It's no problem. It can be done.
You do it all the time,
Quite a bit.
occasionally?
Yeah, and let's say, geez, $250 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Reasonable.
What about the piping up overhead? I mean, he's got a brand new furnace, it seems, but they didn't do anything with the heating pipes when they put the furnace in. Can they be put up higher in the ceiling, or should they be replaced?
No, well, they should be replaced. If you're going to do a finished basement here, what they had here was old gravity hot water system. We can replace it with 1-inch pipe and get it close to the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, you're talking,
It's a big job, isn't it? Aren't you talking a lot of money?
oh, you're talking, yeah, a few bucks here. You're talking about breaking off all these elbows
Mhm.
where they go up into the joists
Mhm.
and reconnecting in and readapting. And you're going to go all the way back down to this boiler. You're going to have to put a flow valve here, a balancing valve to control the other half of the house,
Yeah.
and,
What's a ballpark figure on that kind of work?
oh, 2 men, good day. I'd say close to $1,000 anyway, ballpark figure.
But that would give you a totally new heating
It
system.
certainly would.
Yeah. We were just looking at this. You know, check this out, Mike. There's an original toilet in here. What would the chances be of adding a lavatory in there?
Geez, there's no problem at all. I can say your lavatory would be above the drainage line, so you wouldn't have any problem there.
How about a shower out here, Mike?
If you're talking a shower, you're talking a lot more labor, a lot more expense as far as trenching down, and you may run into some complications, depending on how thick this floor is.
I don't think you need a shower.
I think I agree.
In a playroom. Yeah.
Well, Mike, one of the things that's going to be very obvious, we have the family room, we need heat. We have to have some type of heat down here, radiators or something.
What I suggest that you do is run a loop all the way around the house with copper baseboard, with its own thermostat, its own pump, and
Create a new zone down here.
create a new zone altogether, separate from the house, independent.
What kind of money are we talking about for a new zone down here?
Well, let me just take a fast look.
Looks to be about 30 feet from the furnace to this end of the house.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about 30 feet of pipe. The materials, I'd say $600 for the material and a couple $100 at least for labor and wiring. That's a ballpark figure. Now, it depends on how you're going to lay out the room. Now, the insulation and whatnot and the design. If the more insulation you put in, naturally, the less heat you have to put in here.
Well, it's not an option. It has to be done.
You got to have heat.
I think, Mike, we'll get a set of plans to you so you can work up some definite figures on it.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the first thing we've got to do is get a set, not a set of plans as much as a layout
design,
and scheme.
layout.
And I took a look earlier at a very interesting remodeling of a basement in a community not far from here. Let's take a look at that.
Fine, I'd like to.
Well, Judy, you've done a beautiful job of decorating this home.
Thank you, Bud.
What was the motivation for having to put in a playroom downstairs?
Well, we have a typical center entrance colonial living room, dining room, den, and I needed a place for stuff. I needed games and a family recreation center. So I'll show you what we've done here. This is the entrance.
Oh.
Please come.
Remodeling idea. So this has been in a major shelter magazine
Yes,
now.
Better Homes and Gardens came and photographed it.
Oh, this is terrific.
Thank you. Bright, cheery, a lot of fun.
You wouldn't really know you're in the basement?
I hope not, because that was the main thing. I didn't want to feel like people were underground. It was dreary and...
What was it like?
The worst. It was icky plywood paneling on here, this corrugated thing, which we painted, and I think it has a very nice technique. And look in here.
That's what it was like?
That's what it was like. That's what it was like. And the corrugation was here, and it was all stained brown, and there was an asphalt tile floor on it. Not very nice.
Very unattractive,
Very
I would say.
unattractive. Very
You've done
unattractive.
a terrific job. What about the function of the space down here?
Well, that was the main thing. We compartmentalized. I spent a great deal of time planning out, prior to doing this, what we needed as a family. And in this area, I built in a desk unit, so if the kids wanted to do something, homework or a project or something like that, and they had books, display shelves, and then we went, this was for games. This was for games.
But I see you've got the screen in place right over the window here.
Right, because my husband's a photographer, and he loves photography. So I put the screen there, and we put all his slides in here, and his equipment is under here.
And you can just set it up right over there.
Sets it up right here, shows it, plugs it in, and it's easy. And we all sit here in the gallery and applaud him.
Now, what about storage space? It looks like you took this whole outside wall and have really used it for storage.
I cut down living space because I felt that I needed storage space. So we put everything on the bifold doors, and each child has the closet.
Yeah.
And this is my daughter's closet, and she has her dolls and all her toys. And I can pick up the mess and stuff it in and close it off, and it makes it very, very nice. Right.
And then these must be bigger closets over here?
These were bigger. This was a closet that I put in because I like things, and these were all things that I had for table settings, and I didn't have space for upstairs.
So it's almost like your hobby room in here.
Yeah, and it's very organized.
Yeah.
I know where I want to get decanters, I know where I want to get salad bowls, and everything's right here. So then what we did is, this goes to the garage. You should know, this goes to the garage. I put cocoa matting here, so they wipe their feet. when they
Cocoa
come
mat
in.
is a terrific thing to have at the front door,
Yeah,
and it lasts forever, doesn't it?
It's terrific.
Yeah.
It's marvelous. And then they have a coat closet that they come in, hang their coats, throw their boots
Yeah.
in, and this makes life very easy. I don't have them tracking dirt through
What
the
about
house.
putting down wall-to-wall carpeting in the whole space? Weren't you concerned about the humidity? I mean, you've got a slab underneath, don't you?
No, I put a mildew-proof padding underneath the carpet, and I think it's a necessity because I can have the kids sleep over in sleeping bags here, and we lie on the floor, and we play games on the floor, and I think it adds to your seating space.
Yeah,
It's,
and it warms up the room.
and to the ease of housekeeping. Let's never forget that.
Then the adults have almost a full office space here, don't
Yeah, this was another prime focus point that we needed to have an at-home office. We do a lot of work at home on the weekends. And at the time, my daughter was little, and I wanted to be in the same room with her, be able to work, but have her playing in an area and be in the same room. And that's what this does. We have the files, the full file cabinets, all these compartmentalized areas for papers and whatnot. And we spend time here. Sundays, we can be working at a desk, have the fire going.
Sure. The fireplace was already here?
The fireplace was here.
That's super.
We just cleaned it up and utilized it.
What about your choice of colors? I mean, you've used a very stark white.
Yeah, very stark so that it would be light and bright and really make one enjoy oneself down here. I just didn't want to go into the concept of the paneled playroom that people did in the 50s. I didn't want it. I wanted to feel like we were not below ground and that we had a gay atmosphere.
Yeah, well,
around it.
the Kelly green and the reds and the blues and all that really make it work.
And of course, my daughter was little at the time, so I wanted primary colors so that it would be happy. But I wouldn't change that.
There
now.
isn't anything that you would have done differently?
I think I would have put in a more sophisticated video system where I'm doing it now, so that I had the widescreen and all that electronic equipment was not around at the time. And although we have the VCR out at this point, I think I would have built a cabinet and you know, taped in the stereo and done those things, which I could still do.
Sure, you could convert the corner over there. Well, listen, really, I appreciate being able to come in and take a look, because it definitely gives us some ideas about what we're going to do with our own little project right now.
Well, you're very kind to say so, and I'm delighted to have you. I wish you luck on your project.
Thank you.
Good.
Well, how'd you like that?
I was very impressed, Bob. It's a very light and airy room, functional.
It doesn't feel like a basement
No.
romp room or anything like that.
No,
Yeah.
and it gives each person of the family an area to go to.
I like the storage.
Yeah.
Well organized.
A lot of storage.
A lot of
What's
storage.
impressive is that it's a 10-year-old renovation of that basement. They haven't found any need to change anything.
Yeah.
The family has grown up, and they're still using it on a day-to-day basis. Now, you have a lot of changes to make in this kind of space. This is an older house than that one was, and so forth. And one of the things you've got to seriously consider is what to do about the oil storage
I
tank.
think we've made up our mind, Bob. I think we should move the oil tank.
I do.
You think it's in your budget?
Yes, I do. I really
It's
do.
well worth doing.
I'm not sure. The price is high.
The pipes, it's a lot of money to spend, but you have to keep in mind that you've already got a brand new furnace, and maybe you should consider at this time having a whole brand new
It's something we'll have to consider.
including the pipes.
What can we do with the ceiling?
Well, the ceiling that you've got is pretty useless. Obviously, half of it's already fallen down. Most people that remodel basement space will put in a suspended ceiling where the tiles can be popped carefully out of place on the grid, so that if you have to get to do any work, wiring or plumbing, anything that's up there, it can be done easily.
One of the things I liked was the floor. I am leaning towards a rug now.
Well, as she said, it makes it a lot more livable to be able to use the floor space as seating space, kids playing games and all of that. It is something that you have to consider.
Something we'll have to consider.
Something we have to
And-
consider. My feeling still is I'd like to have a scatter rug that you roll up and take out, but we'll have to discuss that.
Well, we'll talk more about that. What about your wall treatments in here?
I think a simple wall treatment with studding, insulation, and some type of dry goods on the wall, bright. Treat the windows.
Yeah, the ticket is you want to have the thickness of a stud wall here so that you can add insulation.
Absolutely.
Because the tighter and the warmer the space is, the less it'll cost you to heat it. You do have some neat things going on here, like this space in here,
I like the idea of storage and book shelving in here and maybe on both sides.
Yeah, you could do it on both sides, or you could turn one of them into a closed closet like she had over there, where you can, don't worry about what it looks like, kind of. It
So the
gets
children
hidden
put their
behind the
games
door.
and things in too.
And then the other one could be open for display and for...
I think definitely this has to go.
I think so, because you want to have the benefit of this daylight coming into the space, you know, and the more daylight you can get in here, the better off you are.
Absolutely, Bob.
Now, the rest of the space here is also something to consider. I mean, once we take all this stuff out of here, you'll see that it feels bigger. But, for example, this lavatory is something you really should expand so that there's a sink as well as a toilet. And if you remove this little wooden partition and kind of take over the space where the ladder is in here, that's the extra 2 feet that you need for the whole space. But now, we've got to figure out how we're separating this new living space that you've gotten from this utility space behind me over here.
Will we have some type of entrance situation?
Well, that's just the key, yeah, because you want to be able to come from the kitchen up there down these nice steps and feel like you're still in living space, in the house. You don't want to feel like you're in the basement. So perhaps what you should do is, let me use these to illustrate, put a wall across there and a wall across in this direction so that you've got an L here. And on this wall, have a door.
I see.
That leads into the utility space. But let this be a blank storage wall.
With shelving or something.
Shelving, cabinets, whatever. It could also, if you don't take the pipes out, it could also come straight up and hide these pipes.
So we would be entering into the lavatory area from around this way.
Right. This would end here, turn the corner, and also hide this column. And then you'd create a separate alcove in front of the lab.
All right.
Which gives you the potential for all sorts of other uses.
A counter and a sink, perhaps?
You could have another sink and call it the bar. Or you could do a combination, exactly, a children's wet area where they play with, you know, whatever, their watercolors or whatever. And you could have additional storage in here. There's lots of things to think about, but have you been thinking a lot about the budget?
We have, and I'll let Debbie talk about the budget.
I think we've talked about it, and I think the budget allows $10,000, but we'd like to get it down if we could, because we do have many more projects on this house to finish up, as you've seen.
But we don't have a plan yet to work from. So a design, and that'll be important in planning a budget.
I think that's the ticket. I think you're wise. I think, well, Norm, how are you? Well, you've gotten a lot done this weekend.
We were busy over the weekend.
You got the ceiling all torn out. What was left of it?
The ceiling was fairly simple. Debbie and I just pulled down the ceiling blocks. They were the small 1-foot blocks, and the strapping came right down. No major problems.
Good. And over here in the corner, you've managed to get rid of that old jelly closet that you had in there.
Right, Bob. If you remember, the jelly closet went from here all the way down
to the corner.
This was all shelving in here with another closet, a door, and again, as you can see, all shelving all the way down.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of boards. That couldn't have been too much trouble, right?
It was a lot harder than we expected.
Why?
All the woodwork was spiked together using cut nails.
Oh, it was original.
Spiked onto the concrete. It was a little harder than we thought it was going to be.
You've still got a couple of nails left up here. You know, when we start rough wiring, you want to make sure that's all cleaned up.
I'll work on that.
What'd you do with the debris?
Well, we had to cut the debris so we can get it out of the basement.
Yeah.
We took it down board by board, carried it outside, and stored it on the front yard, and we had to hire a truck to take it away.
Oh, you did? The town won't pick it up?
The town will not pick up building supplies.
How much did the truck cost you?
A pickup truck cost us $60.
That's kind of steep.
Very steep. We're considering a dumpster.
Yeah. What did you do over here in the corner where you had that big old fuel oil tank that was hooked up to your furnace?
Well, we agreed with you, Bob, that it should be moved. So we purchased a new tank, moved it over to the other side of the basement. And this now gives us a nice seating area here, which will fit right in with our plans down here.
Super. That's terrific. And you've gotten all the other partitioning, or the board wall that was up here in
this end of the room. Yes, just again, it was the simple partition wall, and we moved it.
The plumber's already been in here putting new copper?
This was unexpected.
Oh, what happened?
Well, taking down the partition wall, which ran right along here.
Yeah.
I was pulling a board.
Yeah.
I pulled, snapped off, and hit the brass pipe, which was very brittle.
And it broke it?
Water was spurting all over.
Spraying on top of it?
Spraying all over the place.
And couldn't you shut it off down there?
Very simply, I went down to the shutoff, and I found out we do not have a shutoff on the inside of the water main.
You did not have one.
So I went to the shutoff that was on the street side of the main.
Yeah.
And it was rusted closed.
Oh, my. So weren't you flooding in here?
We were flooding.
When did this happen?
Sunday night.
Sunday night. What did you do?
We first called the city water department.
Yeah.
And on a Sunday night, there wasn't anything they could do.
Really?
So we were working, water was pouring down. It was starting to get a little bit deeper. Fortunately, we were saved. We have a large sump, fairly deep,
But that could handle all the water that was coming in here?
It handled most of it. I puttied the leaks where I could with a plumber's putty.
Yeah.
And it stopped it somewhat.
Yeah.
But it was starting to fill up the hole, and we had to let it run till Monday morning at 7 o'clock.
You're off to a roaring start. Congratulations.
Our water bill will be a little higher this month.
Yes, I would think so. Well, but at least you've got the space that's going to be your half bathroom in place, and you've got the...
Yeah.
Oh, Ben, what happened here?
While swinging the sledgehammer through the petition that was here...
This was Sunday night, too?
This was Sunday night, too. I didn't realize that the sledgehammer would go right through the wall and right through the toilet.
Well, I don't think you can patch that one up, Ben.
We won't be salvaging it, no.
I notice you've been putting down lines around the space, and here's Debbie. Have you been planning what we're going to do
we
here?
We have. Debbie's got a pretty little diary.
Hi, how are you, Debbie?
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Tell me all about what you've decided. I mean, now that you've had a busy weekend getting wet and slipping around in your basement...
It's been quite a weekend. It has. Eventful. Ben and I have been looking over the situation down here, and we've come up with this plan. As you see, you come down the stairs here.
Yeah, that's how I just entered the basement space.
Into an entranceway where there'll be a nice wall here to carry our artwork. And you enter the room through some archways here. Over here will be our sitting area, which is across from our entertainment with shelves, and that has our TV and the stereo system.
So we'll have a big built-in unit there.
Yes, it will. And then on the other side of the chimney, we'll have some more upper shelf situation for books, lower cabinets, and then a storage closet situation.
You need something with a door on it so you can hide all the kids' games and so forth.
Yes, so we can get it out of the way.
And then what about this alcove that you're creating here?
Here we've decided, and would like to ask your opinion too, we'd like to put the sink there for some water play for the children, also to have a bar area too.
Yeah, that makes sense as long as it's close to the plumbing over here.
Yes, and then you would have the half bath here.
Very good. Now you've been tacking up pages out of magazines this weekend. What's this all about?
I found this in a magazine where a woman had the same situation that we do. It is not a working fireplace. It's just a little niche that she had built.
Okay, because this chimney base that we have here cannot be turned into a working fireplace.
Right. I was wondering, though, if the mason could come and just build this little niche where it could carry a plant or something to make it unusual.
You could probably tear out one course of brick down below and kind of create a little arch there.
All right.
We'll get a price on it. What have you got over here?
Over here, I found an article where a woman had used the beadboard, which we were considering also.
Beadboard, yeah, matchboard it's also called. It's a nice product.
Yes, and I do like the look of it. I was wondering what you thought.
Well, I think it could be very, very pleasant down here, especially if you stained it or painted it white or something like that. Yeah.
To seal it so it doesn't turn the yellow.
Yeah, the pine will yellow if you don't.
Okay.
But you're getting way ahead of yourself on finished details, I'll tell you that. You do have to think about them. What's this one?
Over here, I found a archway situation in a magazine where it just wasn't the typical straight archway. It has a little corner to it.
Yeah, an angled corner. That's perfectly nice.
And I thought it looked country.
Sure. Well, before we get to finished details, we got to get started around here. You ready to put on a nail apron and so forth?
Well, I have to take the dog to the vet's right now, so I will be back in a short while.
All right. How about you, Ben? Are you going to give us a hand?
Excited to go, but Norm has me going to the hardware store to get some nails and a new saw blade, and I'll be right back.
We'll come back in a half an hour or so. Okay. Well, Norm, why don't we get started?
Bob, why don't you give me a hand just so I can double check this measurement. Right on the red line, good. 72.5, that's fine.
Good. So you've got lines down all over the slab that correspond to where she wants the wall.
That's right, where the walls are to be.
Okay, so what are we doing first?
Well, basically, we're building a room within a room with some new stud walls.
Why?
Because this is a concrete basement, and these walls are going to get real cold in the wintertime.
Even though they're dry and so forth.
So we want to insulate it, first of all. And secondly, the foundation, even though this is a pretty good house, it's almost square, the foundation is a little out of square, and it's a little wavy and not quite plumb. So we want to give some nice, new, plumb, and straight walls to start with.
The big mistake is when you do follow the foundation wall, and then when you get to the point of installing cabinets or doing finish work, you find corners that are out of
That's right.
square.
Then you have to start scribing everything and
Sure.
fitting it in.
Okay. So, you're starting off by putting down a shoe, right?
That's right, the shoe, and again, whenever we're against concrete, even though it's nice and dry down here, there's still moisture in this concrete, so we use pressure-treated materials. And if you want to nail it by hand, we can use these 2.5-inch masonry nails. They're a hardened steel nail, so you have to make sure that you wear some kind of eye protection. And they're not the easiest thing to put in because you have to drive them perfectly straight. got to hit them, and you got to hope that they hold well. You might have to put quite a few in. Now, I have a power tool to do it. It makes it a lot easier and faster.
That's actually a gun, isn't it?
It's a gun. It has a 27 caliber blank, which just pushes a piston, which drives the nail.
You got your license on you?
I have a license to use this. You have to be licensed to use it. And all we do is push down on it and fire.
Good.
Well, that makes it a lot easier.
We'll be done getting these down before Ben gets back.
Okay.
The job really goes quickly and smoothly when you've got the right tools. I've been cutting studs to length, but Norm has been using that gun, and in just the last few minutes, he does have the bottom plate right in position around the perimeter of the room. As a matter of fact, he's way ahead of the game. Norm, what's the next step that you've been involved with?
Well, Bob, there's several steps that I've had to do, and the first one was to get this top plate ready to go. And I cut another piece of 2x4, this time not pressure treated because it's at the top of our wall. We don't have to worry about moisture or anything. And I put it up against our shoe and did the layout on both the shoe and the plate at the same time.
Locating where each stud will be.
Where each stud is located. Once the measurement is made, I drew a line across both pieces at the same time, indicating the side of the stud, and then with an X, I show which side of the line I want that stud nailed on.
And they're all placed 16 inches on center, right?
The basic layout is 16 inches on center. Then, in order to get that top plate perfectly in line and plumb with the bottom, I just simply use the plumb bob, which is just a weighted bob with a point hanging on a string. And by hanging it down and aligning it with the inside edge of that 2x4, I just simply
know that you're transferring this point
to the top.
Up to the top.
Right. And I put a mark on my nailing blocks, snap the line across those, and simply nail this up, and it's ready to go. It's ready for all the studs.
And here's Ben with a nail. All set.
Good.
You know, now that you've got this top piece and the bottom pieces in place, you've got to put all these vertical studs in place, but it's not as easy as when you're building the wall down flat on the deck.
Right.
Because there you can nail through at the bottom.
Just use spikes and drive them through.
Here you can't do that.
Not here. We have to do what is called toenailing. And that's not the easiest thing to do sometimes.
Why don't we give our friend a lesson on that?
Okay, good. All right, then what we have to do is take the stud and put it in place. Now, this one's just a little bit loose. So what I'll do is, there's my line and the mark. So we know it's got to go there. And we also want to keep the inside surface of the 2x4 flush with this side. Now, because it's a little loose, I'm just going to get a nail started. Okay, and it's just so that it won't move back and forth so easily. And then I'll come around this side. Two on each side is the general rule that I like to follow. Now, I went over the line a little bit. Why don't you try to drive a couple in from that side and drive it back to the line?
About a 3/4 inch down.
Yeah, at about a 60-degree angle, 45.
Not too bad.
That's pretty good.
A little hard making over your head.
Yeah, your arm gets a little tired.
It does. Not bad.
Not bad. Now, after about 30 or 40 of these, you'll get real good at doing toenails.
Well, that's the idea. Why don't we all grab a hammer and get busy getting these walls in place?
Okay.
Good. Okay. Well, Ben, now that we've got our walls in place, the next thing to do is to insulate this room so that you'll have a nice, cozy, warm family room. And we're going to be using fiberglass in 6-inch bats that already comes in the proper width to fit in between these studs that are on 16-inch centers, but we don't have any kind of facing on the material. Because what we're going to be doing is, after we put it all in place, we'll be installing a continuous vapor barrier, which is simply polyethylene, also called visqueen. But we can't do that until we've cut all the pieces and put them into place. Let me show you a quick way to kind of mass produce this job. First, you just have to take the measurement, the height that you have, which is 84 3/4. Do we have a piece of plywood someplace over
Right
here?
here.
There's one over there.
Right here, Bob.
Yeah, you want to just put that around here someplace? Let's take that 83 3/4 off of the edge of our bottom plate there. You want to mark that for me? There you go. Okay, and if I put a weight on something like this, it'll keep it from moving on us. I could have just marked the concrete floor, but then you'd be making cuts with your utility knife and wearing out blades every 3 minutes. Now, is there a short stud? Yeah. Okay. That's the mark. That's the length from there to there for all the pieces that go in there. And let's grab one of these.
Okay. So what do I just put it up to the
just set it down right up against there.
All right.
Take this piece, line it up right over your pencil line. I like to step on it to compress the insulation, and then just give it a cut. Good. Now, that piece should just go right into the wall with no problems at all. Just tuck it in. Of course, it'll stay in place of its own will.
There's no stapling or?
No. Don't need to do anything because it'll all be held in place by the studs. You got that?
Very simple.
Keep doing it over and over and over again.
Okay.
And then we'll get the plastic up. Are you on the mark? Tighten up. Okay. These red chalk lines are going to be invaluable when we start putting down our sleepers, the pressure-treated 2x4s, that will form a framework for the new plywood deck that'll go here. And they're 2 feet on center because we're using 3/4 inch plywood, so that'll work. Of course, we'll insulate the space in between. Let's recap. We've got all our perimeter walls, the stud walls, done and in place, and we've just about finished insulating. So the next thing to do is to get a vapor barrier across the whole room. We're going to be using polyethylene, also known as visqueen. And the most important thing is that you don't puncture this, that you have a solid membrane all around the room, because you want to keep the warm, moist air that's inside the living space from penetrating into that insulation. You want to keep the insulation dry. So we'll need a utility knife and a staple gun, and we'll get started.
Well, Bob, one thing before you put that up, I want to do one more thing, and that's to put a level line all the way around this room.
Why do we need a level line?
Well, the reason we need the level line is because I want to use that as a reference point from which we can measure to make sure that your ceiling is perfectly level and that your floor is perfectly level.
Okay. And I can use my level and just go around.
Well, you could, but that's only a 4-foot level, and you have a room that's 20 feet long here. So if the level's off a little bit, or you're not exact, very precise in making your marks, you could be off an inch by the time you get to the other side.
Well, how else can we do this?
Well, I could have brought along my transit, but that's a real expensive tool.
I don't know how to use it.
You don't know how to use one, okay. So what I did is I brought along this little setup here, which is a water level.
What does something like that cost?
Well, this is only about $25, Bob, and believe me, they're making some profit on this because all it is a coil of clear plastic tubing in this little container. What we did is we filled the tubing with colored water, and in the center here, there's also a little reservoir for the water. And what you do is just uncoil it, and you pull this cap off. It's like a little vent tube, let some air in there. As you can see, the water starts to move in the tube immediately. If I raise the tube, it drops down.
It wants to seek its own level.
That's right, it's seeking the same level as the reservoir that's in the center here. As I drop it down, it rises. And the colored water is simply to make it more visual so that you could see it better when you mark your locations. Now what we do is I'll just take this line, bring it over to the wall, put it in the corner here to start, and you see it drops down, and when it gets where it stops, I'll just take a pencil and make a mark. Now we have to do this all the way around the room.
Right over here?
Yeah, why don't you try it on that end of the wall.
You've got about 50 feet of that so that you can go all around the perimeter
It's very
of the room.
important that we don't move that reservoir while we're doing this. Leave it on that platform.
I just wait a second until it stops.
Yeah, until it stops moving. It's still moving. Okay, that's it.
This is great. I like this.
You
Now,
do it.
We do this all the way around the room.
Sure. Now, you can use this for a lot of things, too. You can use it
Fences?
for putting up fences or a deck or something like that. Let's bring it down the corner and
Let's take the chalk line, and we'll go ahead and establish a level line for us along this wall. See the mark right there? Pull it tight. There we go. Okay, that's good. Now, with the extra material that we've got here, we can just cut it, leave a couple of inches there, and then you'll take a shingle and just kind of tuck in right into the, behind the stud. Okay. Well, what's next, Norm?
Well, Bob, we're all set to start setting these sleepers. And what I've done first is nailed this 2x4 on as a guide, measured down from my level line that we set with the water level, and attached one to each side of the room.
Okay.
And Ben, if you could bring this line down and attach it to that one. The reason for this is just a little system to make it easier to get the middle of the floor. We don't know if it's up or down or what it's doing down in the middle. So you just string a line, making sure it's pulled very tight.
So that it won't sag in the middle, yeah?
Right, from one side of the room to the other. And by using this line, we'll be able to get a perfectly flat floor. Now all we do is slide our 2x in, and I've set this at such a height so that I can use another piece of 2x4, a little scrap, as a gauge. And the idea is to bring the top of this sleeper up to the line. See, there's a little space. Up to the line by, excuse me, by shimming it. And to shim it, we'll use these shingles, shimming shingles. Now you can buy all kinds of shingles from the real expensive ones, but you call these shimming shingles because they're exactly that, very cheap and inexpensive. And what you do is you slide thin end to thin end, always starting at the thin end. As you slide them together, you get thicker and thicker to the point that you can get almost 3/4 of an inch.
Well, why can't I just use one shingle?
Well, if you use one shingle and you slide it under here, it's tapered, so it's going to make this piece of wood want to be tipped.
I see.
So we always use 2 to make sure that it's flat. Now use this as a gauge. A little too high. Sometimes with the lumber, you have to make sure it's pushed down tight. Okay. All right, now that's not too bad.
It's not bad.
Get it on our line.
Now, how far along apart do I put the shingles?
About every 2 feet, mainly because we are putting these timbers on the flat, and they're not as strong that way. So I would like to see support every 2 feet.
That's a lot of shimming.
It's a lot of shimming. But if you can handle the shimming, I'll use the gun and fasten them down to the floor.
Right.
That's all set.
It is easy to work
That's
with.
good even with a utility knife.
Yeah. Well, we're ready right now for one of the most important parts of the whole job, which is to lay down rigid insulation right over the old concrete slab. We're not putting down a styrofoam product. We're putting down something called polyisocyanurate, which gives us an R7 factor per inch of insulation. And it also comes with a foil moisture barrier, so that it's a one-step installation. We won't have to lay any plastic over this material. And we've already, it comes in 4-by-8 sheets, but we've already cut it into 2-foot strips. Fit right into place.
Good
And
start.
now. Perfect.
You just slide
So
it down a little?
Yeah. What's next, Norm?
Okay, I'm going to put some adhesive on these sleepers.
Just regular panel adhesive.
Yeah, it's like a construction adhesive.
Now, why do we need that?
Well, I like to make sure that that plywood's going to stick down good and we're not going to get any squeaks because there's no way to get underneath this later on.
Right.
Okay. And then
Now,
if you
Ben,
want
can you help slide that sheet
a little
right
bit
in?
there. Okay, and let's just tip that forward. This is just 3/4 inch tongue and groove plywood.
And I'll step on it.
Okay, that's
Does it need to move any farther in?
I think it's right up against both walls. pretty
Good.
much.
Now, why is it a good idea to have tongue and groove plywood here?
Well, with the spacing of our sleepers, it'll stop the plywood from moving between these. Gives us a real solid base. We're using coated nails, cement-coated nails. You can just tack that in then. And the reason I like to use these is because they hold a lot better.
They really
They really hold.
Yeah. Well, now, before you know it, we'll have a floor. And, of course, one of the next things we're going to be dealing with is a ceiling in here. But before we get to that, we have to worry about the lighting for this area. So we've called in Dick Metcher, our lighting consultant, to help us figure that one out.
Is this the place?
Yep, this is the place. Hi, Dick.
Bob, it's finally come to this. We meet in the cellar.
It's going to be a fabulous family room, okay?
Well, you need to get some light on these stairs. I only broke my neck.
That's what we called you in here for. Watch out with that thing.
What is it?
And that is a laundry chute.
We don't want to light that.
No, we'll have to cancel this so that we have enough walking room space to get through a corridor that we'll be building here. And then you enter the family room right here. Meet Debbie, the homeowner.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Hi, Dick. Nice to meet you.
Debbie, he has seen a sketch of the general layout for this area, but you better tell him a little bit more about the feeling you want in here.
All right, we would like a very cheerful daytime effect. Lots of lights, and we were thinking of recessed fluorescent fixtures. Bob had recently shown us a room that used a lot of fluorescent fixtures, and we were pleased with that type of effect.
Well, fluorescents are fine for ping pong tables and offices, but for a room like this where you want to create a mood, you want to dim the fixture. You want to create different types of levels of light. And to dim a fluorescent fixture becomes very expensive. You need dimming ballast, you need a fluorescent dimmer on the wall, and you're talking probably $200 to dim the fixture.
That's
didn't
way
realize
over
that.
budget. Yes.
Well, that would blow the budget.
Yeah, so...
Well, tell me a little bit about the room.
All right, well, this is our focal point of the room. There's going to be an illusion of a fireplace with a plant or something in the fireplace area. So we'd like to make this somewhat special and some type of lighting situation. What would you suggest here?
Well, I brought along a couple of fixtures with me, and one of them is what we call a recessed wall wash fixture. And as you can see, it has a reflector up inside to reflect the light out at an angle. What we would do is recess this fixture up in the ceiling here and point it towards the middle of the fireplace, and it would reflect the light towards the fireplace. Because as you're standing on that side of the room, you can't see the lamp. And I think it would create a nice mood in the room.
They do bring out the texture in the wall.
Yes,
Hey,
that's
Dick,
right.
what about a situation like, well, look over here. This is going to be a scenic window. It's going to be an actual window mounted in the space, but the only daylight that'll ever come through is from the old basement window. How can we highlight it artificially?
Well, this is where we ought to use fluorescent. We use it in our showroom, and it's very, very effective. What I would do is put a fluorescent fixture up at the top here, and the fluorescent being a long fixture would give you a sheet of light as a backdrop here and would shine through the fabric and would look like it was backlighting, like daylight coming in from the outside.
And
I think that's the effect that you want.
Yeah.
And it's an inexpensive fixture.
What about general lighting in the whole room?
Well, the other fixture I brought with me over here is a recessed down light. It's probably our most popular fixture. It's a fixture, again, that recesses up inside, up in the ceiling. It has the bulb that sits up inside, so you really don't see the bulb. It has a black baffle here that takes the glare of the lamp. And again, these can be dimmed and create the mood that you want to. And
Are they pricey?
Oh, it costs about $25 or $30 for a fixture.
That's not bad. Well, I think the thing we ought to do is figure out exactly how many we need and where we need to put them.
Yeah.
Right. We've got a ceiling to hang in here before too long.
Wherever you want a spot of light, this is where to put them.
Okay. Well, how about right here where the bookshelf? First thing that's missing is the bottom half of the laundry chute, which was, I guess, a great thing to have, but every time you walk down the stairs, you bump right into it. And they've finished a good deal of work here. And our windows have arrived. You know, these are going to be placed up against the basement wall to kind of create really a scenic window, but he's got all the stud walls in place for that alcove, and then the bathroom is going beyond that. And, of course, here's our happy homeowner, Ben.
Oh, hi, Bob. How are you
Still
today?
busy. How you doing?
Busy. Very fine.
You've made a lot of progress since I was here at the end of the week.
We did. We made an awful lot of progress.
The deck looks fantastic. It's nice to have this all around. It's really toasty and warm in
It
here.
is. You can feel the warmth.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember when we left the last time, we had the sleepers and the insulation already laid out.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the long weekend, while everyone was enjoying themselves, Debbie and I carried down all the plywood.
How many sheets did it take?
16 sheets of plywood.
It gets a
And
little heavy after the first couple of sheets, doesn't it?
Very heavy. But we got it down. We took the plywood, cut it to size, and started putting in place and nailing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ran into our second problem. It's hard to nail.
Well, it is yellow pine.
It may last a long time, but my arm was sore.
Yeah.
But we got it
and
down.
if you were using the cement nails, the thin ones, they bend
Right.
easily. But you've done a nice job. It's all tongued and grooved stuff,
Yes,
so
it
it's
is,
good
and-
and tight. You won't have any problems here.
Hope not.
It seems spacious in here right now, like something's missing, and I think I know what it is.
There's a lot missing.
There's been a lot accomplished. You had these big 3-inch heating pipes that were for all your radiators, and they're gone.
Even though it was an expensive proposition, we decided because of the height, we decided to remove the pipes.
It's a great idea.
What we had an arrangement with our plumber was that he would take down all the pipes, and Debbie and I would carry them out And again, they were heavy, but we saved money doing it that way.
You're working on the old arms this weekend, right?
One thing we did for precaution was to replace all the brass pipes. If you remember, when I broke the first brass pipe, I decided I did not want any water problems.
You're
so we replaced them
absolutely
all.
right, because you're going to have new living space here, and you don't want to have any old pipes buried in the ceiling.
No, we don't.
So, Ben, what are you up to over here? I notice you've got some wires hanging around.
Well, my arrangement with my electrician is that he will allow me to place the outlet boxes and to run the wires. Then he'll come out, make the final connections, and have everything inspected.
Oh, good. So you're actually getting a lot of that work done right now. What's happening here?
This is an outlet box. If you remember, we're going to have a shelf system with a cabinet system down below. Originally, we had planned on strapping being placed here with our bead board or pine paneling below it.
Yeah.
This would have allowed us to run our wiring behind the strapping and in between, and not
without interfering with the moisture barrier.
Without puncturing this at all.
Yeah.
We changed our mind. We realized that we were spending an awful lot of money for something that would not show, so we decided to cover this with wallboard.
Well, indeed, all that pine would be mostly hidden behind your books and behind your cabinet. So you're just going to drywall this whole wall.
That's correct. But that necessitated to run our wiring, to pull back the moisture barrier, run our wiring in between it, along this piece of strapping.
Now, you haven't poked any holes in the visible.
We were very careful.
Good.
Very careful.
That's a good idea whenever you have a wire like that. Even though you're going to have a suspended ceiling in this whole room that'll be below that, the wires, nobody can ever hang off the wire.
That's right, a little bit of safety.
Stapled right in place. So then you're going to have a loop from this plug to the next one.
To this plug over here.
And you're working on that one.
Right. Now here, of course, we are going to be having the pine paneling.
You'll have a wainscot that goes all along this wall.
So we are able to push this without puncturing the moisture barrier.
The moisture barrier. Then you're ready to bring another loop from the next box.
Next box to this box.
Okay, well, why don't we get one up in place? You better take it through here first. And I'll position this next box for you. Right on the strapping. Ordinarily, these work boxes are put in place right up against a stud. In this case, we're going to attach it right to the strapping in this location, staying close to the stud where the strapping itself is pretty rigid. And that way, we don't have to in any way interfere with the moisture barrier. And of course, once we put the wainscoting up, the box will be flush with the pine, and it'll work out real nicely. Let me get one more nail in here. There you go. All right, you got that one over there?
All set.
You better cut this one. All right. Let me make sure there's plenty of slack. Wait. You're going to be going from here down to the box. Cut it right around here. Good. And then, where's your next plug going in?
Our next plug is over here. Again, we'll make another loop.
All right.
From this plug up, over, down into this plug here.
And right in there. What are you going to be doing about lighting? Have you gotten yourself straight on that?
Yes, we have.
Here's a screwdriver.
Okay. If you remember, we're going to be having recessed lighting fixtures.
Right, these things.
Right. Now, we've pre-marked in the stud areas, the ceiling joists, where they're going to go.
This is the work kit for the recessed light.
That's right.
What's the beauty about these is that the work box is already attached here.
Saves a lot of time.
So you don't have to tack any boxes onto the studs up there, or the joists, rather.
Now, this will be sitting on the suspended ceiling grid.
Correct.
All right. But before we can do that, we've got to run some wires from one fixture to another.
Right.
And we've already started that.
Good. So let's see. You're going to have one of these fixtures right in this bay.
One up to here.
Between the joists, and that's the feed for it. And then the other one goes over here. You've made sure that you're not going to be more than about 1.5 feet away from the front face of the
We've measured out.
Okay, good.
And then from here, we'll bring it down to a switch. This will go with a new switch.
What kind of wire are you using here?
We're using a 14-2 wire, which will run off a 15-amp circuit.
That's perfect, because a 15-amp circuit allows you to have 1,500 watt bulbs.
And with all the lighting, I doubt if we'll hit 1,000.
You'll never get over 1,000, sure.
So plenty of coverage.
Okay, well, why don't we get busy and start stapling this up here. The sooner we get all these in place, the sooner we can get your electrician to liven it up.
Again, we want to make sure we leave plenty of wire.
Yeah, lots of slack.
We can always cut it short.
But I want to be able to get started with
just a little bit more.
The wall board in here, and we can't do that until we've had an inspection.
That's correct.
Okay, now, where are you going to have a switch for these two lights?
Switch will be down here in place of this outlet, which will go.
Yeah, all the old work is going to be
Everything will be
scrapped
gone.
as soon as we're
Right.
ready to. So you'll have a control here, probably on a dimmer,
That's right. I'll just tack this here now.
and then... Yeah. And then what you've got to do is bring your hot feed, which is the same cable. Yeah, leave a good foot extra. All you got to do now is tack a line from here all the way to some point. Oh, you've already got a work box.
We already have a
over
work
there.
box over there, Bob.
Okay. This is what you call a junction box or a work box, and this is where all the different feeds will go to all the different points.
That's right.
All right.
At this point, my licensed electrician comes in and makes all final connections.
Okay, and then we can start talking wallboard.
We can.
Let's get this one in place.
All right.
Hey, Deb, I hope this isn't too heavy because, you know, we've got about 40 more sheets to bring in this afternoon.
Well, I think my arm's 3 inches longer on one side. This stuff is heavy. This isn't the worst part of the job, Norm. It's when Ben and I get to taping, and we always seem to get too much compound on the joints, and we're sanding for days, and it's just a messy job.
Well, maybe I can give you a couple tips this time around that might make it a little bit easier.
Okay.
But before we get into taping, let's put up at least another sheet in this corner. And what we're going to do is, remember, you've got the wainscoting down below here, so we only have to put the drywall line from the top of the wall down to here. Now, it measures 51.5 inches, but I think we'll only cut it 51.25 because we got a little bit of a fudge factor here to deal with since your finished ceiling is going to be down around here somewhere, okay?
All right.
So we'll come over to the sheet we just brought in, measure 51.25 and put a mark. And if you could get that square there.
Gee, Norm, is this a tool the average homeowner should have? It looks rather expensive.
Well, the average homeowner probably wouldn't have it, but if you're going to do a lot of drywall work or if you're going to cut up sheets of plywood, it's a great tool because you just put it up against the edge of the sheet and it gives you a square line and a nice 4-foot straight edge. And if you're going to use a lot, it's well worthwhile.
Okay.
So what I want you to do is take your utility knife like this one and just score the paper right along the edge of this
All right,
square.
but
Make
not...
sure you hold this down so it doesn't move.
All right, but I don't want to cut all the way through.
No, just score it. And make sure you keep that blade, that's good, perpendicular to the drywall because if it's angled back, the piece will be a little bit short, and if it's angled the other way, it'll be too long, and there's nothing worse than try to trim off a little bit of drywall.
Okay, now what's...
Just carefully slide it off the edge of the sawhorses. Just let it down to the floor. Okay. And what you do is come behind the sheet, and here's our cut right about here. Put your knee up against it.
Yeah.
And just pull with that hand and just snap it. That's it.
Oh, that was easy enough.
Now take your knife and cut down from the top, about halfway, and then go from the bottom up.
Okay.
Just cut right through that. All you're really cutting is the paper. Good.
Okay.
That's easy. Now you put that piece over there, and I'll swing this piece around. And we're lucky here. We've got this piece of strapping. We can rest it right on. Slide it into the corner. Okay. Now, just tack it there. Put one nail anywhere.
All right.
But don't drive it in all the way because I want to show you something on the nailing. Okay,
like that?
Yeah, that's fine for now. Now, another thing I want to do is I want to locate the rest of the studs that I can't see here. I know they're 16 inches apart, so I'll mark them 16 inches, 32 inches, 16 and 32 at the bottom. And if you could give me that piece of strapping, we'll just use that as a little straight edge and draw a line. Even, you know, even the professionals do this to make sure that you're nailing directly into the studs.
What happens if we don't hit a stud?
Well, if you don't hit the stud, you got to make sure you pull the nail out, or it might, you know, pop out later. And if you really hit it hard and there's not a stud behind it, you might put a hole right through the drywall, and that's a little difficult to replace.
Okay.
To fix. Now, on the nailing, the reason I had you stop there was I wanted to show you when you put the nails in, you drive it in, just give it one more whack so that you get a little dimple like that. Don't hit it so hard that it breaks the paper. Just give it a dimple. and nail it about every 8 inches.
About every 8 inches?
Right, so why don't we nail up the rest of this sheet?
Okay.
That's good. Well, that sheet's got a nail now for about every square foot, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And what I'd like to do is start in the corner with the taping. But before we put any compound in there, the first thing I'm going to do is put this fiberglass tape. And you can feel that it's sticky on the back.
Yeah, we use this instead of the paper tape?
That's right, and I think you'll see why in a minute. We'll just fold it and put it right in the corner. The reason we're putting it in the corner, this will stop any potential cracking because the studs behind it might shrink. And what you do is just run it down.
It won't have the bubbles like the paper tape usually has?
That's one thing. You don't get all those bubbles that you have to work with.
Okay.
And the other thing is that when you put the compound on here, you know, it gets in this mesh right in there and right onto the drywall, and it makes a much better seam. Okay, now that that's done, we're ready for the compound. So take your homemade hawk and throw a glob of the ready mixed drywall compound. It's really neat. In the old days, you used to have to mix this up. Now it comes all pre-mixed. Good. Okay, what I want you to do is just do one side of that corner. Okay, that's the idea. You can just fill that right in. And the reason we're doing only one side now is because we have to let that side dry, and then we'll be able to do the other side the same way you're doing that right now. Now just go up to the top again once more, and just take the knife and just go right down the whole thing just one time. Okay, that's it. Don't fool around with it anymore. We'll come back to it when it's dry and maybe put another coat on it.
Okay.
Now the nails, just hit those. Hit it and scrape it off. Good.
Okay.
And, you know, they'll shrink a little when it dries, so you might have to come back and hit these again.
Okay.
Now, over here, we've got our flush seam, and again, we want to put the fiberglass tape on it so that it won't crack. And just put it right over the center. And I'll run it down to the floor, and actually, you can start right there on the top and
all right.
start to fill it in with compound. When you get down that far, and go up to the top and just come right down again, just like you did in the corner, and try to get rid of some of this excess. Good. No, it's not as difficult as you thought it was going to be. It's not that bad. You know, we have to get all this drywall and taping done before we can do the next step. I don't want to have to tape up against our nice new finished ceiling, and I don't want to drop any of that compound on this board, so we really should finish all this before we go to the next step, which is to put the ceiling in.
Okay.
So you can just finish up that seam.
Okay.
You know, one of the most popular do-it-yourself homeowner projects that you can talk about these days is the suspended ceiling. And that's what we'll be putting in the family room down here. It's affordable. An average couple can put it up in a room this size, 12 by 20, in a couple of hours. It gives you the freedom to poke the panels out of place and bring in wires at a later point if you want to install another telephone line or a video recorder or whatever. And, of course, there's not much to it, but we're going to rely on Norm to give us a little bit of an explanation of how it's installed.
Hey, Bob.
What's the first thing that one deals with?
Bob, the first thing that I did is, remember, we spent a lot of time with the water level to get a level reference line all the way around this room. And I used it to make sure that the floor was perfectly level, and now I'm using it to make sure that the ceiling is perfectly level.
Right.
So all I did is measured up from this line and snapped a line all the way around the room, making sure that I kept it down from the framing about 2 or 3 inches so that I have room to slip the panels in and take them out later if we need servicing.
Yeah, and so you'll have room for electrical wires in the future if you want to add anything.
That's right.
Okay. So then once you've got your line established, what's next?
The first step is to put up the angle, the small angle, which is just 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch all the way around the room, just above that line that we snapped up there.
Okay, and that goes around the whole perimeter of the room.
That's right.
Why don't we get started and take a measurement?
Okay, let's get a measurement.
Now, did you just pick this up this morning? Because these panel systems are very easily found in almost any lumber yard.
Yeah, you can buy all the parts at home centers, and it's relatively inexpensive.
Oh, it's quite inexpensive, yeah. I've heard the average room can be done for about $120.
That's right. Now, we could cut this with an ordinary hacksaw,
Yeah, that's what the homeowner would normally use.
Right. But I'm going to use this power miter box, which has a very fine-toothed carbide blade in it, which easily cuts through this.
It'll make some sparks, though, won't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
There we go. Okay. Now, is there any special kind of nail that you need?
We're just going to use little 4-penny box nails and just nail it right into the studs.
Yeah, I'm glad you've got pencil lines where the studs still are. That's...
Okay, Norm, that's it on the perimeter, Al.
Good.
They're all in place. I guess the next step is...
to do our layout of the grid.
That's the fun part, yeah. Well, we've got two options, essentially. We're dealing with 2 by 4 foot fiberglass ceiling panels here. And we can either go like this in the east-west axis, or we can put them like this, north-south. But the room is a rectangle, and the longest dimension is going in this direction. So I think these should relate to that dimension as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Besides, I know Debbie wants them to go that way, too.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a sketch that I've drawn of the room to give us the size and shape. Now, it's 20 foot 7 inches across, and it's 12 foot 2 deep.
That is really a shame. If it were just 20 feet across by 12 feet, we would just have 5 panels
by 6 panels.
6, yeah,
right,
it would be
but
so easy.
Unfortunately, we don't. So let's start out and draw an imaginary center line.
Well, much as you would if you were laying a tile floor.
Right. Yeah. So now that is one in that direction and one in this direction. All right, so that means we've got 12 foot 2 divided by 2 is 6 foot 1. So if you went in 2 foot increments, we'd end up with a 1 inch piece.
That would be pretty nasty.
So let's say that instead of starting in this line, let's straddle this center line with a 2 foot panel. In other words, 1 foot on each side of that line. So this would become a 2 foot panel. Then we'll go another 2 foot, another 2 foot.
That's fine.
And that'll be good because that'll leave us 13 inches.
Gotcha.
In that dimension.
And of course, the same is true on the flip side.
That's right. Now, the 20 foot 7 divided by 2 is 10 foot 3.5. And that works out well because if we go with a 4 foot panel, a 4 foot panel, we'll be left with a 2 foot 3.5 inch panel.
Right.
So that works out fine.
Okay.
It'll all be symmetrical, the best layout.
Okay. Now tell me what you were doing a minute ago with the lines over here.
Okay, the first thing that I did is established some lines for the grid. And what I did is measured off of the wall 6 foot 1.
That's our center line.
Which is the center line.
Yeah.
But because our panel is going to straddle that line, we have to go over a foot, which is half of a panel, to locate the grid, which will be right beneath this line.
Right.
Now also I measured out from the wall to this line 2 foot 3.5, which gives us the dimension for this last panel.
Of the end panel, yeah.
And right here at the 2, we've got an intersection of channels where the channels will be. Okay? So now what we need to do is cut our first main channel here. So what we want to do is take one. If you would just hold it up.
Now, there's a tab on the end of these. Should I bend it or anything?
No, don't do anything with that yet. Okay, we'll put it up like this. Now, the thing is, after we put the main channels up, we're going to be putting these cross channels which go in these slots like that.
Right.
And I want that channel to be right under this line. So it's obvious that our main channel is too long. So we're going to have to cut it a little bit shorter so that this slot is right below this line. So since I know that this is 7 foot 1, we'll just measure from this slot and cut the other end.
Okay. I better hold the end of it.
Okay, you hold the end up so Okay. And give that a cut. Give it a try.
Well, they should line up.
Get on top of the channel. Good, that's perfect. Now all we have to do, this is a little short, so I'll have to extend the other end of it, put a whole series of these main bars every 4 feet all the way across the room. It's like putting together an erector set.
But this is the main part of putting up the ceiling. Once you've got the grid work in place, all you have to do is pop the panels in. Let's get started. Norm, it's amazing how much rigidity we get for the whole grid once we have all these wire hangers in place.
I know, at every 4 feet it makes it real stiff.
All we're doing is putting these hooks into the boards up here and then hanging wire off of them. And we just take it down and see there's a hole in the T every foot or so that all we have to do is drive that wire through there and then bend it up. And then we check it to make sure it's level. Norm?
Right, because we've got this line that's one strapping width below the grid, and just by using another piece, we can come along and check it at the various...
Yeah, I think that one's right on.
That's right on right there.
All right, let me just
bend that around.
Bend it around a couple of times. I think this is the last one, isn't it?
That's it.
Okay, let's start putting some panels in.
Okay.
This will be the fun part. Now, the great thing about these panels is that they're flexible. If we were using rigid panels for the ceiling, we would have needed about a 6-inch clearing, just about a half a foot, in order to drive them in there.
Yeah.
But this goes in like a piece of cake.
Easy.
Yeah. How about cutting it, Norm? We're going to have pieces cut on the end there, aren't we?
Okay, why don't I get you a measurement for our end pieces.
Look at that. Yeah, get me a dimension on that.
Okay, it's exactly 27.5, but we should make it a little bit smaller, so maybe 27 1/8.
Yeah, the instructions say to cut them shy by about 3/8.
Okay.
So you want 27 1/8?
Yeah.
I'm going to use your trusty's T-square here and a brand new blade in our knife. And now the trick, as I understand it, is to use a sawing motion with your blade to cut the facing material first. And then after you've accomplished that, you can score across the whole width of the sheet and cut through the fiberglass itself.
Okay, I assume where we've got light fixtures going in the ceiling, we can use the same method to cut those holes.
No problem.
Good.
As long as you do it slowly. Take it away.
Give it a try.
Good. We're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. Okay, I'll get to work on those. Norm, that looks terrific. Let's get the rest of them in.
Okay.
So, Ben, what do you think?
Wow.
You like it?
I'm impressed.
Oh,
Good.
it really
I'm
looks
very
great.
impressed.
It's a pretty quick transformation, you've got to admit.
It sure is.
Yeah.
It
And
makes it
even-
look like a room.
Yeah, but it sounds different, too.
Well, it is an acoustical ceiling. And, you know, once you've got it all in place, it really defines the space, but it also makes it quiet down here.
Looks great.
You've got a number of things left to do, though.
I understand.
So what are we supposed to be doing now?
Well, if I were you, I'd get busy on finishing up the drywall, put another coat of joint compound on it, okay?
That's Debbie's job.
And then get it sanded before we come back to help again. And Norm and I were laying out some of the beadboard for the wainscot along here. I think, basically, you probably should wait till we're here the
Wait
next
till we have
time.
some help with that.
And we'll give you a few
Okay.
pointers on how to install
Okay.
that. Now, again, I would love it if you would take care of these edges. You know, put a little bit more insulation in here. But actually, before you do that, let's do something about this concrete. If you
Right.
can get some filler in there and smooth
I
it out.
have some filler
Yeah,
for that.
and then put some white paint on it, and then put in some fiberglass in here, but don't compact it, okay?
Just lay it in
You
loosely.
know, that ruins the R value. Just lay it in fluffy. And then we'll help you get both these windows in
Fine.
place.
All right.
And listen, over here, there's still a lot of work to do over here, Ben.
There sure is.
Yeah, you've got a stud wall to build around the perimeter of that area that's
Right.
going to be your new powder room, and you've got a good deal of work to do in the
Basically,
alcove
it's the
here.
same as we've done here, so we just continue on.
Exactly. Stud walls and then drywall. What about the mason that was coming out today?
Well, I had an appointment with him. He was tentatively coming out to see what the job was going to curtail
Well, it's a
about putting the hearth
simple
in.
item, just breaking out here and building a false hearth, kind of an
Yes.
arch.
Simple but hard to get the masons.
Yes.
Well,
Very hard.
I hope he shows up. I hope that you'll be pleasantly surprised with the amount of work that's gone on since you were last here, Bob. Sure, I will be. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Okay.
What are you doing on this concrete wall here?
Well, we're trying to treat it cosmetically. It's not an outside wall.
That's right. Your
and
garage is on the other side
We
of
don't
this.
have to worry about insulation, but we do want to clean it up. We can't stud it out because I'll lose too much of our stair room. So I found some of this mortar mix. I have to fill in some of these voids in the wall.
The big holes in it, yeah.
And just to smooth them over a little bit. And then I found this product that I wanted your opinion on. It's a very thick textured paint.
It's ceiling texture.
Yes, and it just gives a nice finish to the wall.
It's a good idea.
It's washable and it seemed to have a, fill in the small holes and everything, and I was wondering what you thought of the
It's
product.
not going to crumble or anything. You've done this, it's already dry.
Yes.
I think it's a good idea because you won't be building out and you'll have a nice bright look there on the only wall that is
And
really...
relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, exactly. Why haven't you done any further work on all the ceilings over here?
Well, we've had to make a decision. We need some help with it. If you can see from here, we're going to be having a headroom problem coming down the stairs. So I think the suspended ceiling can't be put here, and now we're trying to figure out what to put here.
Okay, yeah, in this section from this beam over to where you
Over to
are,
here.
you've got to conserve the headroom.
That's
so
right.
I would think that you'd want to just put wallboard right up there, strap across and put up some wallboard.
Yeah.
And then the old laundry chute, take some tin snips and cut it so that it's flush with the ceiling, and then you can just build a little trap door there that plops down against the wall, and you can bring your cart in, catch all the laundry that way. That'll work nicely.
This is pretty nice.
This is great. You've got a nice 6-paneled pine door in place.
Pre-hung.
Very good.
Really something put up. And this separates the utility part of the basement from this part. And it's nice and wide.
Isn't it terrific?
Yeah.
Just a couple of weeks ago, the whole basement looked like that,
That's right.
and now we're
making progress.
making a lot of progress.
Right.
It's nice that you got a full width.
We were very lucky.
Now, you've started cutting your beadboard for your
Yes, we have.
wainscoting, and I really like the job you've been doing on this drywall installation. I can hardly tell where the seams are.
Well,
are you planning to wallpaper this wall, or?
Well, we are. We have a decorator friend of mine coming over to discuss wallpaper later on.
Oh, super.
So she
What have
will
you got
help us
here?
out.
Intercom. We installed this going to the second floor, and again going up to be one going to the kitchen. It's a necessity.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now is the time to do it when the walls are open.
Well,
a lot
good for
easier.
you. Good for you. Oh, this looks super. Hey, I thought you had the mason lined up to come and chop out some of these bricks and give you a little archway
but
here.
unfortunately he is still busy, so we're still waiting. He has promised us.
It looks good. I'm really pleased with how much work you've done on the wainscoting, all this beadboard. What's the treatment going to be?
It's going to be stained, a light stain.
Good. That'll be nice because you'll see the grain.
We don't
and
want to cover it with the paint.
Exactly.
No, not at all.
And you've been taking part of the ceiling back down.
Yes, we have.
The plumber's
Allow the
been
plumbers to work.
super.
All the new heating pipes.
That was a good idea, you know.
I think it was
a little bit of extra money, but you've gotten rid of those old cast iron pipes that were there that would have been a real headache hanging down
Well
below
worth
the
it, gives us
ceiling
the extra
line.
headroom.
And you've got all your junk in here, but this is coming along nicely.
All the drywalling is done in here. We've started with the suspended ceiling.
You're still planning on using this as a wet bar,
There's a wet bar and a little desk area there.
That'll be nice.
Right.
You've got another door up
Yes,
to the powder room. You got a lot of work left to do in there.
A lot of work to do in there.
Well, I'm sure you'll get on it. Now, what about back there, where we've been talking about a closet at one point, storage
Well,
closet?
remember, we had
wanted to
planned on
build?
putting a closet here for storage, and on second thought, we don't think we want it. We want to go with the base counter cabinet system and a wall system with shelves.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. 'cause
We're going to balance both sides.
Yeah, it'll be nice to have the same kind of element on both sides of this big, expansive brick. And this is going to primarily be your entertainment
center
area.
We plan on a sofa here, and over in this area here, we want to put some type of reclining chair so we can view over here, TV, and still have that end of the room open for playing.
That'll be very nice. This will have to be a little bit different to accommodate room for the TV section. I hear the saw's going. Norm's already up in the garage, isn't he?
Yes.
Well, I think I'll go join him, see how he's doing, and I'd love to talk with the decorator when she comes.
Fine. We're going to start on our painting.
Okay. Hey, Norm, it's great to have a dry garage to set up shop in.
It sure is. We need a little room to make these cabinets.
How are we coming along?
Well, let me show you what I'm building here. These are the cabinets that Ben and Debbie wanted, and what they have is on the upper portion, open shelf cabinets with adjustable shelves, and on the lower portion, just a countertop with a series of doors. Behind the upper cabinets, we're going to put beadboard so that it ties it in with
The wainscoting,
on the sidewall. Now, we made a little extra provision on this side in that we jutted out the counter and left a little extra height on the center of this cabinet so that their TV can fit in there.
Excellent, but we won't do that on the right side of the fireplace.
No, we'll run it straight across over there.
Okay. What's the story with all this sugar pine I see behind you over there?
Well, it may look like sugar pine, but in fact, all these strips of wood have been cut from plywood.
Excellent. Pine plywood.
These
then.
4x8 sheets, this is pine plywood, and it's about 2/3 the price of clear pine.
It's less money,
So
for
it's
sure.
less money.
The other advantage is that when you use regular clear pine 1x12s, it'll do that on you. It'll cup.
That's right.
And with plywood, you've got a good stable
Nice and
material.
stable, right.
So how far along are you? Are you working on this top unit?
I'm working on the top unit, and I'm just making some of the grooves here. I've machined almost all the pieces. And to make the grooves and some of the rabbets that I need, rabbet cuts, I used a dado head, which is just a series of blades.
Right.
And let me show you, I have one more groove to make.
Okay. Yeah, that's an invaluable tool to have on your table saw.
And let me show you over here. We're almost ready to put this one together in a dry run.
Want to do a test fit?
Sure. Now, this is the top, and I've put 2 dados in here to accept these side panels.
Let's do a dry run then.
Okay. And those just slip in like that. Now, here's the dado to accept this shelf, which is going to be above the TV. Okay, just slide that in. Now on the end, what I did is put a rabbet, which is just like a shiplap cut, on the top and the bottom, so that when we put these together, we'll get a nice tight joint there, and it'll be, you know, good and strong. So that goes like that.
And then this will all be glued and fastened when we're down there with it, right?
That's right. Now on the other end,
this end, the same configuration.
Now one thing I'll show you is before we try that, these grooves that I made are for these adjustable shelf standards.
Well, these could just
They're going to go in like this, but I want to wait until after they've stained the cabinets before I put them in.
Yeah, very often these will just be surface mounted right on the plywood, but this is a lot more elegant solution.
Right, this makes a much nicer job.
And then this
Then
one
that
goes
piece
there.
goes there, and then that should fit right on the top there. Okay.
Nice and square and true. Okay, Norm. Why don't we get started on the bottom unit then?
Okay, we'll go down to the basement. I'll show you the base cabinet.
Okay.
Well, Bob, down here, I'm going to build the base cabinet right in place.
Why not just build it up in the garage and bring it down here?
Well, because we're between a couple walls here. We have this wall, and we've got this masonry wall, which is kind of imperfect and uneven. And the chances of me building a cabinet and being able to get it down here and slide right in there perfectly are pretty slim.
Yeah.
So it's easier for me to fit all the pieces between these 2 walls.
And it's also going to be a big, heavy unit, so
That's
that I'd rather avoid having to carry it down.
Okay. Now,
What do we have back here?
Okay, the first thing that we have up here is our frame for the toe kick, which would be the first thing we would set in place.
So this is really the base
That's the base.
of the unit, just made out of 2x4s.
2x4s, and I've added a piece of strapping because this space here would be a toe space. And by the time we put the face frame on, if I don't raise it up enough, you won't even be able to slide your foot underneath it.
Gotcha.
So this extra 3/4 of an inch is important.
Okay. Now, we know we have a level subfloor here, so you shouldn't have to worry too much
Well,
about
I think we should give it one final check before we nail it down. Okay, when it gets nailed down tight, we're going to be fine. Yeah, let's just check it to the end. Okay, it's not too bad. It's just off, just a hair, but I think we're okay when you get that down tight.
All right, so let's nail it.
All right, and nail it up with some coated nails, and all I'm going to do is toe the frame into the floor. I have a line here that I want to be on.
Okay, Norm. Now with the base well secured to the subfloor, what's the next step?
And the next step is some glue. Before we set the plywood down for the base, I want to glue it down to the frame.
Okay. I'll start at this end.
Every time, whenever you build cabinets, I like to glue everything. Every single piece that we put together, we glue, so that they never fall apart. Just use a good quality carpenter's glue, yellow glue or a white glue. Okay.
Okay.
All right, now let's bring our base around. You can slip your end in first. Okay, I just want to check one thing here. right on that red line. Check your end, see if you're on that red line.
Perfect.
Good. All right, now I'm going to nail it down with some finish nails. Okay.
Good, they're all nailed and set. What's
Set.
next?
Okay, the next thing to do is we've got to put a frame up here for the countertop, and that's this line right here. And the frame is all built.
Okay, let me get the other end.
That height of this counter is the same as our wainscoting, which is about... I think you're going to have to lift your end first, Bob. Okay. Pull it down. I've already marked my studs, and I'm just going to spike that. Okay, Bob.
Oh, that ought to hold too, TV.
That'll hold it.
All right.
Now, I've got the top. I cut it. Let's just put it up there and see if it fits. I don't want to fasten it right now because I want to build the face frame first. I want to make sure it fits okay.
You even got it scribed over here. That's very nice.
Okay.
Beautiful.
That looks good.
All right, so you're not going to nail this down.
No, but let me show you a couple of details that we're going to do to this. All along our wainscoting, we're going to put a chair rail like this, a little cap, and then underneath it, we're going to take a piece of this casing stock and do that.
That'll be beautiful.
Okay, now we're going to carry this piece all the way around and actually use this as an edge for our counter. We'll glue that on there.
And we'll have the molding underneath?
That's right, the molding will be underneath it.
That'll be a nice detail. Okay, well, what's next then?
Well, the next thing to do is that we have to go back up to the garage and take some pine and mill up some stock to build this face frame.
Excellent, let's go do it.
Okay.
Hey, what's going on? We're getting a shower.
Yeah, they predicted a few for today.
Well, you'd hardly notice down in that nice dry family room. Now, what type of pine are you planning to use?
Well, Bob, I put a couple pieces out here. This is #2 pine, which is relatively inexpensive,
It's
65,
the cheap stuff,
70 cents a foot. But, you know, it's got knots in it, and it would be kind of hard to use for a cabinet. It's really meant to be used for exterior trim where it gets painted and or stained. Yeah. But what we're going to use is D-Select pine, which is about 3 times the cost of this, but it's really meant for cabinets.
It's called D-Select.
That's right. And what that means is that it has some knots, but they're very tight and they're very small.
No, it's beautiful stock.
Now,
But
we
this is
buy
about $2 a foot, isn't it?
That's right. And I buy it in 1x12, 12-inch widths. And the reason for that is because I could go down and get several pieces, you know, the different sizes we might need.
Commonly, you can buy 1x2 or 1x4 or 1x6, whatever.
That's right. But bringing that back, you know, all those pieces and all those edges, they're bound to get nicked and dinged, and then you have a hard time making a good cabinet. This way, I've got one board with only 4 edges, and I can rip out of it anything I want.
Okay.
Also, the cabinet, sometimes we might need a piece that's a little bit bigger or smaller than the standard width. This way I can get any size I want from a 1/4 inch to about 11 1/4 inches.
Okay, so you've got more freedom with
the wider
buying
material.
a 1x12.
Right.
What about the table saw itself?
Okay, there's 2 things that are very important about the table saw. One is this rip fence and the blade. First of all, the rip fence, it's important that it's a heavy steel fence, that it has a mechanism to tighten it both on this rail and on this rail, so that it stays perfectly straight and parallel
to the blade.
With the blade.
Yeah. And
what
what about
parallel to the blade? You have a very difficult time ripping straight pieces.
What about the table itself?
The table itself is also important because it's heavy cast steel, finely machined, so that it won't warp or distort over time. This saw is real old and it's still perfectly good.
Okay. And what type of blade are you using?
Okay, the blade is a carbide tip blade. It's a 60-tooth blade, which means it has 60 teeth all the way around the diameter. They're little pieces of carbide which are welded to the main
blade
itself.
They're like an actual little chisel there.
Right, very hard steel, and they stay sharp for a long time.
But they cost a lot. I mean, how much do you pay for a blade like
That's right. A blade like this is about $50. But, you know, it stays sharper than a regular blade, and you can have it resharpened.
So in the long run, it makes more sense to have a good blade like this,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Okay. Any tips on how you set your fence before you rip?
We have to rip some strips about 1.5 inches, so why don't I set up for those first? Always set up and measure off the fence to the
Rather
blade.
than relying on any of the of the numbers that you get back
that
here.
are on here, right? Because we just
You're
ignore
strong
those.
there, but
By 1/8 inch, and I'll show you why I'm doing that in a second. I'm going to rip all my pieces about 1/8 inch wider than what I really want as a finished product. Oh, Bob, even with that nice fine blade, you can see it's still a little bit rough. And what I want to do is I want to have the surface to be as smooth as this, because this edge is going to show as part of the cabinet.
So
I'm going to use this tool. And what this is a joiner.
why not just take a hand plane to it?
Well, I could, but, you know, labor is expensive and time is important. And with this tool, I can do it much faster, and I can actually do a better job.
Right.
And how this tool works is similar to the saw. You have a heavy bed, a nice heavy fence, and you have a cast wheel with blades. There's 1, 2, 3 blades set in there.
3 cutting blades, yeah.
They turn at relatively high speed and shave off part of the wood to give us a nice smooth surface.
It's a dangerous tool, though.
Very dangerous. Always make sure this guard is on, because you don't want to slip. You got to keep the wood tight against the fence and tight to the table, and you don't want to stick your fingers in there.
Yeah, let's run it through.
Okay. See what it does? It takes off about 1/16 inch, giving us a nice smooth surface and eliminating this rough surface. Let me finish running that through.
Beautiful. Now, what about all your cross cuts, Norm?
Well, Bob, we'll take the pieces that we rip and bring them down right to the cabinet location, and in that case, we'll use a power miter box to cut all our pieces to length.
All right.
To the proper length.
Boy, Norm, this is really coming out beautiful. The face frame looks excellent, and look at that nice tight joint there.
Okay, would you like to try a hand at it?
Sure.
Over here, you can, this piece is missing the bottom rail. Why don't you put that in?
Let me get it over here.
Grab that piece of stock we made up in the garage.
Now, when you're building cabinets, you rarely use a measuring tape, right?
That's right. You
just
always hold it and mark it.
fitting and marking.
But before you do that, let's not, you don't know for sure if this edge is nice and square because this came right from upstairs. You should take it up to the miter box and cut it so that we're starting with the square edge to hold against the style.
Trim about a ½ inch off of it.
That's right.
Now, the power miter box is a tool that's really become almost universal with most contractors.
That's right. It's only come out in the last 6 or 7 years, but now everybody's using them.
But you can count on getting a good square cut with it. And it's got a break on it.
Okay, now when you bring this back to the cabinet, make sure that this face is the side that's going to show. Because you can see that's a nice clean cut.
Yeah.
But on the back side, because of the blade rotation, it chips a little bit.
Right.
Okay, so always keep the face.
So this is our outside face.
That's right, smooth edge up.
Okay. Have you got a fine point on your pencil?
Okay, I got a nice.
Now, which is the best way to take a mark? By fitting it in, like, into the corner like that?
No,
or?
because you're at an angle. Tip it up on the side.
Yeah.
And just enough to catch it. And put a very small mark there. Not too big because, especially with stain, we don't want to have to sand those pencil marks out.
Okay.
Okay, now you can take it up and cut that end.
Keeping, again, the right face up.
That's right. And just leave that mark, because you can always trim it again, but if you cut it too short. Okay, let's give it a try.
That's good.
That's okay. If it's a little snug, just tip it in there. Okay, that's what we want. We want it snug so that joint fits good.
Yeah,
okay, that fits good.
That'll be fine, but I think we better put some glue on it.
That's right. We glue everything when we build cabinets. Why don't you just run some glue down the back of that? Okay, and put a little bit on each end here so that the joints will be glued. Good. Now, you know, when you build cabinets, really, the thing that holds them together is the glue. But while the glue sets, we have to hold it in place. So what I'll do is just use some small finish nails and nail it in to hold it.
And I'll take a damp rag, which is another thing you want to have when you're working with glue.
Especially if you're going to stain it later. You want to wipe all that glue off. And just set the nails in a little, and we can come back later and fill those holes in the finishing process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bob, on this wall cabinet, I'm putting some adhesive, panel adhesive on the wall so that the boards on the back of the cabinet will be secured there.
So that
the
they won't
cabinet
cover
will be,
anything, the
that's
loose
right.
boards. Okay.
It's pretty heavy, so...
Okay, this is going to be excellent.
All right, I think we're there.
Yeah. It's a gorgeous fit.
I'll put a couple nails to hold it in place for now, and I'll add some screws later to make sure it doesn't pull off of the wall.
Well, Ben and Debbie are really going to be pleased with this. One of the hardest things about any remodeling job is towards the end when you have to start picking the wallpaper. That's when an interior decorator really comes in handy.
Well, Roberta, what do you think about this? Ben was sort of leaning towards this last night.
Yeah, I really like the colors, but I think there are too many stripes in the design.
I think so.
Hello,
Yeah.
ladies.
Hi, Bob.
I guess
How are
you've
you?
gotten to the fun part.
Yeah,
Hi.
Hi. This is Roberta.
How are you?
She's my
Nice to meet you.
decorator. She's been
Aha.
helping with the rest of the house.
So you're getting professional help here.
Yes, I think we need it.
Let me ask you a question. How do you go about figuring out the design or the look you want for a room like this? What are the considerations?
Well, our first consideration was the wainscoting, which goes all around the room.
Mm-hmm.
We have wood bookcases going in on either side of the brick.
Mm-hmm.
The brick here, and we have a new suspended ceiling put in.
Right, I know all that, but what does that tell you?
Well, there's a lot of lines in the room already, and it's very busy.
Different materials, busyness. Okay.
Right.
So what do you opt for?
Well, our first thought was to go with a natural texture, which is a grass cloth. But when we put it up,
It gets lost,
You were
doesn't it?
bored to tears by it, right? Yeah.
not enough interest. So then we thought maybe an artificial textile, which had a little bit more life to it.
That's paper, but it looks like a cloth or a fabric.
Exactly.
I still think it's wrong.
I think it was
I do
more
too.
contemporary feeling, and Ben and I decided last night that the wainscoting really set the mood for the room. I
Right.
think it sets a very country feeling.
Absolutely.
And so Roberta
So you
and I
stopped
have
looking at these, and what else have you looked
Right.
at?
going
Pineapples.
on to...
Pineapples.
Huh.
Very early American look. But once again, this one we felt was too small a pattern, and once again, too many stripes.
And too busy.
Right. Too
Yeah, and
busy
I can
for the
see where
room.
stripes would be wrong, because you've got all the vertical lines of the
Exactly.
wainscoting. Uh-huh.
So we came up with this, which has our early American look.
There.
I think it's right there.
There you go.
here. And it adds more color to the room.
That's certainly
A
early
little
American.
bit more interesting.
And it has that stencil feeling that I originally talked about.
Yeah, and it's a family room, and it's nice to have some vivid colors like the red and the green in there.
Right, nice and cozy.
And also, Bob, Ben and I have been experimenting here with the beadboard.
What have you done to it?
Well, we've just taken a wash of 50% paint, 50% thinner, and then just put it on and washed it off with a rag. And it just seems to seal the pine. It takes the yellowness away from it.
Right, it kind of whitens it up, but it approximates that cream or parchment background you've got on the
We're
paper.
wondering how
Right.
you felt about that. Or...
Well, you've got to do something to it, and I'd rather see the knots and the grain of the wood come
Yes,
through rather than have you paint over it.
Yes.
I think this is a good idea, because otherwise the pine is apt to turn kind of orange and dark, like, you know, with a couple of years' age on it. What about flooring? And I mean, I guess you go for that first, and then you have to pick the flooring material, don't you?
Right.
Yes, and Ben and I have been mulling over and discussing about rugs versus vinyl goods. And I think I've won out with the vinyl goods, with the children and the animals and the spills that have to be picked up.
Controlled, yeah.
So I think we've been looking at the vinyl goods.
Well, you've got tons of samples here. Have you decided on any?
Well, Roberta and I have been mulling over them, and I think we've come down to two. I don't think we've really made a decision, but it's between these two here, Bob. I think we're leaning more towards this in the color tones. These were nice, but the brickwork was too small in them.
The pattern,
and
you mean.
one way or the other, the colors were wrong in the rest of them. So I think it was between these two, and it's going to be another day or two, I think, before we actually make the decision.
Yeah, and you'll probably have some scatter rugs on top
yes,
of it to make it cozier.
That's right, to bring in some color.
Roberta, what about our special windows that we have here? I guess you're aware of just what the purpose is.
Right. Well, we're going to have a light behind the window so that it will just wash the window with light. And we're going to soften just a bare window with a fabric valance and little tiers that will come down on the side. And then in the middle of the window, we're going to put a pleated shade.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, this will let the light in from the outside, but it will block the view from in the room.
Beautiful. Well, I can hardly wait to see you get started.
Well, very soon, Bob, we hope.
Well, that's about it for today. We're running out of time. Join us again next week when we'll have our final show here, and we'll get everything in Debbie's basement, which is now their family room. If you recall, when we started, we had nothing but bare concrete floors, concrete foundation walls. That has all changed. We've got new partitions up, new flooring. It is a super insulated space, and today we're going to be getting together with Joe Ruggiero, who's in the business of helping people figure out where to place their furniture and their belongings. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Bob.
How are you?
Good to see you. Fine.
First question is, just how do you go about figuring out where you put what?
Well, I think that's a good question. Basically, what we would do is start with a plan. And here we have a plan that we worked out with Debbie and Ben. They wanted to create two areas, one being the parents or the adult area
on
with
this side,
watching television and conversation. And then the other side of the room would be more for the children, so they can work and play. I also suggest that you take swatches from the upholstered pieces and put them together on a board that you could have when you go shopping for accents or accessories, because the entire color scheme's right at hand.
Makes it a lot easier than trying to remember what color the couch was. And
exactly.
So forth. Yeah. Now, it looks like you went out, or else they had a lot of antique furniture to bring in here.
Well, we did use a lot of the things that they had collected. We did bring in some antiques, but most of the furnishings in this room are reproductions.
What about the chair you're sitting on? And
well, for example, this is an actual antique. And the reason I like it is that it adds some interest to the wall. It gives it a little profile here. And
the weather vane, yeah.
Right, and it is a collector's item. This piece is a reproduction of a Shaker chair. And the Shakers numbered their chairs. This happens to be a number 7, so it probably belonged to the great-grandfather.
So the bigger the number, the bigger the person?
That's right.
Yeah.
This chest is pine, and it is also a reproduction, and I'd like to show you the profiling along the bottom. It gives it kind of a Pennsylvania Dutch feeling. It really looks like a country piece. And then using pieces that are mementos of the family. I like to use these brass pieces because they belong to Debbie and Ben's family. Talking about antiques, this is a photograph of an antique sampler, and it's been printed. So it almost looks like an original, and yet it's just a reproduction.
Yeah, you can almost see the texture of the stitches from here.
Exactly.
Terrific. What about choosing contemporary furniture or upholstered furniture to go in a room
well,
like
as
this?
I had mentioned before, with the plan, they wanted this room, or this area of the room, for television viewing. So Ben wanted a recliner, and Debbie didn't like them because she said they were too big.
Now, is this
so
one?
we came up with this idea, and that's a recliner.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's small in scale, so it really doesn't look like a big overstuffed recliner.
It does fit in. It's not
It's
one of those
functional.
huge ones. What about the couch there?
Okay, we used a small print, country print on this, because I didn't want it to compete with the wall covering, which has a pretty predominant pattern. So we selected a small country print. And here's an idea that's very popular today in decorating, and these are called throws. And the reason I like it is because it brings all the colors together in the room. And it also is an energy saver because on those cold winter nights you could wrap it around and get warm.
It'll keep you warm.
This, another idea, bring personalization into the room. And these pillows were done by Debbie. This one was handmade by her, and I think it becomes a nice conversation piece, and it gives a little color accent, too.
Absolutely. Now, what's going to be happening over here? Is everything already arranged? Is there any logic to how you arrange things out?
Collections. Collections are very popular today for a lot of reasons. People love to collect things, shop, go on sprees. These are English spongeware and stickware bowls. This is Margelica, which is very popular today because of the interesting shapes and the colorations. Many of the colors in these pieces pick up the colors in the room. And also another piece, this was given to Debbie and Ben. It's a whirligig, and we just think it fits perfectly.
Now
in
that's
that
a
dish.
reproduction, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but it looks like an old piece.
But the Margelica over here is really antique.
That is right.
Super. You know, I really like the area rug that you've thrown in here. It's not too busy, but it has that real nice texture, and it goes nicely with this floor that we have in the whole area, which just went down about 2 or 3 days ago, and quite an interesting process it was. Let's take a look.
Good.
Okay, well, that's going to be a beautiful floor, Rusty. I mean, it's almost like instant gratification when you roll out these vinyl sheet goods, but you and I know that there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. We had started off here with a subfloor that was 3/4-inch pine plywood, tongued and grooved at the joints, and I thought that would be all we needed. You've added another layer here.
Yes, we put down a Lawan plywood board with a solid core.
It's only, what, about a 1/4 inch thick?
Yes.
And I guess the important thing is that that inner core is solid.
Right. There's no voids or no knot holes in there to break through.
So that you don't ever have to worry about somebody in a high spiked heel or something going through and puncturing.
Right.
And then what have you done to, what's all this white stuff that we see down here?
Well, first we put the Lawan on top of the original plywood and staggered the joints so they wouldn't move.
Oh, it's not running in the same direction that the underlayment is.
It's gone the opposite way. And then after that, we've used a latex floor leveling compound on the seams to take up any more imperfections between the sheets of Lawan.
Very good. So you end up with an absolutely flat subsurface that this material goes over. Let's talk about the vinyl sheet goods here. How expensive is this?
Well, they range from maybe $4 a yard up to $30 a yard. This particular one is $30 a yard.
That's a heck of a spread from $4 to...
It is, but it's the process in which it's made and the amount of material that's put into the product.
And the amount of time that it takes to manufacture it, I guess,
yes,
right?
Like the $4 a yard goods, they can put that out, I think it's 5 city square blocks a minute.
The equivalent of 5 city blocks a minute?
A minute, yes.
And this takes longer.
That is fast.
How is this made?
This is made in layers. First, they start off with a fiberglass mat. All right. On top of that, they pour the solid vinyl color crystals.
Chips?
Chips, excuse me, yeah. And on top of that, they pour solid vinyl, and then it's cured together.
I see.
Yes.
Is there any variation in the amount of vinyl that's poured over the whole thing?
Yes, yes. The more expensive ones, the more wear layer. This one has a 25 mil thickness to the
So that's a lot, yeah.
Yes.
And then is the white backing applied later?
Yes, the whole thing's turned over, and this white cushioned resilient backing is applied, and that takes up any impact from like high heels. They won't puncture it. They'll have memory to it. It'll come back and nice.
It's resilient, so it has a memory. It bounces right back. Great. Well, let's talk about the actual installation, because we've laid it out, but obviously it's not installed yet. By laying it out, you've got the grid pattern in such a way that if I stand here and look down this line, that line looks parallel to it.
Right.
It's squared off. Are you ready to start cutting and trimming?
Yes, I am. I'm going to start cutting right over here.
What kind of a knife do you use?
Well, for this particular, we use a hook knife. And there's a sharp edge on the inside of the hook, which cuts the goods, but on the outside it's dull, so it doesn't cut your woodwork or...
So you don't have to worry about going through and damaging the baseboard or whatever. Okay, where are you going to get started?
Right over here.
All right. Boy, at $30 a yard, you want to make sure you don't make any mistakes when you're cutting and trimming, right?
Right.
Now, here you've got a bump out. How do you deal with that?
Well, you just give a small slice around the corner.
Oh, and then just trim.
Right.
Rusty, what's the estimated life of a floor like this?
Well, you can't wear this stuff out. This is about 20 to 30 years expectancy. And you'd probably change your decor before you could wear it out.
Well, Rusty, having it all nicely trimmed now, I guess you're ready to put the adhesive down, right?
Right. And this is a special adhesive that's made just for this backing on these goods. Oh. What it does is it reacts to the backing and bonds it.
Are you sure? It looks like Thousand Islands dress. It's a chemical product that will react to the backing on the goods, you said.
Bond it right down to the Lawan.
Great. Why don't you get started? You're using a notched trowel. not much of a notch to it.
No, about a 1/16 of an inch, but it's a recommended notch, Charles. Leave just the right amount of glue.
Okay, I'll let you go to it.
Thank you.
Do you have to work real quickly with this stuff?
Not really. It probably will have about a 30-minute setup time on it.
Oh. How come you're not coming out all the way to the edge?
That's so when we cut our seam in the vinyl, we have some room to peel back the goods and get the glue underneath it.
I see. I'm surprised at how little you actually have to put on.
Yes, it doesn't take much with these new glues they put out today.
And now you just roll it back into place, right?
Right.
Okay, so now you're ready for the persuader over here?
Yes, it's a 100-pound roller.
Yeah.
And you have to roll it into the glue both directions evenly. Takes out the air bubbles, and it makes sure that all the backing is pushed directly into the glue.
Rusty, why don't I give you a hand with this, which I think is just about my speed. You can get started on the adhesive on the other side. Whoa, it's heavy, but it's just like mowing the lawn, isn't it?
Good choice on the floor, Bob, because this obviously will receive a lot of wear from the children, and I think it'll work very well. Speaking about the children, let me show you the area that I've designed for them. There's no upholstery over here. We've used mostly wood pieces, and this has nice rounded edges, so they're not sharp, so you don't have to worry about the children
Falling into them and getting hurt. But is this sturdy?
Very sturdy, and these are reproductions of Windsor chairs, so that same antique feeling is on this side of the room as well as the other. Speaking of sturdy, the tabletop here is designed so that the children can do crayoning, they can do their homework, they can have refreshments, snacks, what have you. And it also serves very well for Debbie and Ben because the table opens up, and if they want to entertain with buffet or refreshments, they can do that as well.
How have you planned for the, well, the necessary mess that usually occurs in a playroom?
You want to get those toys away quick.
Yeah.
So if you open that up, all the base of this unit is designed so that children can stow those toys away. And also I've scattered some interesting baskets throughout this side of the room because I think it's nice for the children to be able to learn to put their things away as well.
Yeah, that makes it quick and easy too.
Exactly.
I noticed that you continue to have kind of precious things on display.
Well, I like to keep the collection going on this side of the room as well, and I think it's important that children respect fine things and also learn to appreciate them. They might even want to start their own collection with found objects such as this shell and let them display their objects or stones.
That is a good idea. You know, I really appreciate this rocking chair that you've put in over here. It would make it, well, I would stay in it all day, but actually I wanted to point out to you this area of the family room.
Interesting.
Where we wanted to really provide the kids with an area, a wet area, where they could clean up after projects or start finger painting projects and things like that. And this whole section came together because, well, first of all, they had this antique ice box that they brought with them when they bought this house. And so they went off to a home improvement center where they found these cabinets, which are really a beautiful match. The finish is very close to them, and they have this nice recessed look.
Attractive.
Yeah. And also over here, if you haven't peeked, in an area that was just a dark little cubby hole in the basement, we've managed to give them a half bath with all sorts of nice details, like the oak toilet seat, and over here where the lav is, we have even the fine touches of oak.
Looks like an antique.
On the faucet handles, and brass, of course. And the wallpaper, which looks like it was a neat trick. It wasn't that easy to put it up. Let's take a look. Now, Bud, how do you get started with a tiny little room like this?
Well, Bob, we're dealing with 21-inch goods here, and I've laid this room out in such a way that we're not going to be short of the door casing or the countertop.
So that's the first objective, not to end up having to put up a 1-inch or 2-inch strip of paper.
Right, we don't want any nasty little short strips here.
Okay.
And I've got 15 inches off the left side of the paper.
So you're not starting with a full sheet right up against the corner.
That's right, that's exactly right.
You're starting with a 15-inch strip.
And put the remaining 6 inches on the other side.
Okay, so how do you cut it?
Okay. Well, here's the paper here that we've pasted up already.
Oh, you've got a whole bunch of strips all ready to go.
Right.
This one's already been pasted
This is all pasted.
Booked, right? Which means you've folded it up?
That's right. We need 15 inches off of the left side. So I'll just measure over 15 inches, and I will cut through both ends of the paper.
Don't you have a pencil?
That's too dark, and it's much more accurate this way, I think, Bob. So then...
Well, that's a good tip. So you end up with 2 cut marks on either end of the...
So then when you turn the paper around, you just use the straight edge, and you have the 2 notches that you line up to. And then simply make your cut.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Production. That would go a lot quicker.
This is the 6-inch piece.
You're going to use that piece on one side and this pice on the other, right?
That's exactly right.
I'll help you bring it in. Hey. Which one goes in first?
Put the big side in first, Bob. Okay. I've already checked the corner, so it's perfectly plumb, and it's important that the first strip is hung plumb. Because if the first one's crooked, they'll all be out of plumb. And it's important that this first strip is also hung plumb. And you need to, you know, pick up your match. This happens to be a straight across match. And you just simply put it into place.
This would be an easy paper to match up, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Just
It's
kind of
very
like flat
easy.
as opposed to one of those big,
Right.
flowery seams.
I have a level here that I can double check on that it is plumb. Okay. And just simply run this one down.
So once you got your starter corner in like that, does it matter whether you're going to the right or to the left?
No, it doesn't. You can go both ways, Bob. Just carry on right on around the room.
You know, we went to great trouble to make sure that this whole basement family room was super insulated, the walls, the floor. But even so, you need some additional heat for those really cold winter days. This is radiant baseboard heat. Take a look at how it's installed.
Okay, first of all, we have right here an 8-foot section of baseboard. They come in increments from 2 to 8 feet.
In 1-foot increments?
1-foot increments. It goes against, we lift this up and put it right against this back wall.
And that's a non-mechanical part. That's just a backboard, sort of.
That's right. We slide it to the end, and we make sure that this is level. Next thing we do is we screw it to the wall.
Well, that's nice and secure now.
Yeah, that's good and tight. So what have we got over here, Mike?
Over here, we have a piece of copper fin tube baseboard that we're going to connect.
Okay, this is the real working part of the baseboard heat. And it's just a copper pipe with these fins attached to it to radiate the heat. What happens at that end?
Over here, we're going to connect into the existing boiler, and all it is a loop that goes right back to the heating system.
And over here, I think before you can connect it, you're going to have to trim it or cut it off, right?
Yes, we're a little bit long there. Trim it with a hacksaw.
Is it critical how many fins you have on these?
It does make a difference. It increases the BTUs the more fins you have.
Okay. So now, what's next?
Okay, working at my end, where the boiler is, we're going to flux up each one of the joints. Although each of the copper, all the copper does look shiny, it should be cleaned, which it was done before we started fluxing.
And what does the flux actually do?
The flux actually helps the solder to run around evenly and flow.
So essentially, you're dry fitting all the pieces along the way.
That's right.
What's next, Mike?
Right now, we're going to put another piece of pipe on the top of the baseboard to complete the loop.
Okay.
This is the return part.
That's right.
So the water that's going through there is basically water that's returning back to the boiler to get heated up again.
Right, it has less BTUs in it.
Okay. Looks like there's going to be some trimming required.
That's right. Joe's going to measure it off now and fit it up.
Okay. Now, you wouldn't be using a hacksaw to cut this pipe, would you?
No, there's too many burrs.
That's a nice little pipe cutter, is it? Tube
right.
cutter?
Excellent.
Meanwhile, down at this end, I've cleaned and fluxed both ends of the copper baseboard, and I've cleaned and fluxed both of these fittings. This being a brass tee with a bleeder, so that in the event that we have to drain the system down, we have a bleeder here and we can let the water out. Okay, I'll put that on. And this goes on the top. Actually, it helps. You can take them off and slide them both together.
Yeah.
So that they fit.
I thought I was the only one who had trouble putting those things together.
Now we're going to solder up the fittings.
Okay, is that it?
That's it. All we have to do now is just give the joint a minute or so to cool, and we'll be ready.
Now, when do you inspect it, and how do you inspect it?
We'll inspect it by pumping it up with some compressed air and checking for any leaks.
Mm-hmm. Can we see what the cover's going to look like?
I've got it right here,
Go
Bob.
right in now.
Does this just snap on these little hooks?
Yeah, first on the bottom of the hook, and then
Just hold
press it right on the top. It snaps into place. And Mike's got the end piece.
That looks nice, Mike.
That's it, Ben. Do you like it?
I love it.
Where do I send the bill?
Now, located throughout the family room suspended ceiling are recessed lights, as planned by our lighting consultant, Dick Metcher. Like everything in life, there's a couple of tricks to installing these. Take a look. Debbie, you're sure this is where you want that other recessed fixture?
Yes, I am, Bob. I have a piece of furniture here that I want a downlight on.
Table or something. So, Mike, how do we hook it up?
Well, Bob, I got a wire up here from the rough-in before.
So we find our wire.
Got the wire. All right, pass me that housing.
And then we connect this wire to the housing for the recessed fixture.
Right. You have the knife, Deb? All right.
What kind of knife are you going to...
I'll take my electrician's knife, and I'll strip this non-metallic sheeted cable.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Being careful not to nick the wires that are inside.
You kind of tucked the tip of the blade in and then just
using
took along the
tip.
side. Yeah.
Why are you stripping so far back, Mike, too?
Well, it gives you enough wire to work with when you're inside the box. All right. Now I'll cut this cable back. And I'll take the wires and I'll insert them into the Romex connector. You would connect the bare copper wires first, which would be your ground.
Yeah.
Then you would connect your two white wires, which are your neutral wires.
Yeah.
And then the last two would be your black wires, which are your two hot wires.
Now, with the wire firmly connected to the box, what's the next step, Mike?
I would make up my three wires. First, my two bare wires.
The bare copper wires.
Which are your
first.
ground wires.
You're going clockwise.
Clockwise.
Any reason for that?
Turning it clockwise tightens it down even tighter.
Okay.
Tighten with the lineman's plane, tuck it away.
Okay, now with all the wires firmly connected, what's the next step, Mike?
All right, Bob, now we'd put the housing up into the ceiling.
And how is it going to hang up there?
Well, putting the recessed hangers over the ceiling tile.
What's going to hold them in place, though, it seems?
Now we have 4 clips. Deb, clip, please.
Okay.
Are those black items?
These go right over the hangers, Bob, and right down onto the ceiling tile.
Mm-hmm. Now, with this safely secured onto the ceiling grid, that's about it. It's not going to go anywhere. What do you do next?
Well, Bob, we still have to secure it because according to the code, it has to be independently secured from the ceiling.
Oh.
So what we do is we drive in a nail on each side.
Into the joist.
Into the joist. And we hang a piece of copper wire. That piece of wire.
Okay.
And the purpose of this is, if the ceiling did ever happen to fall, the light would still be hanging. I've seen a ceiling with 50 fluorescent lights, and the ceiling fell, and all that was hanging was 50 lights. And you just wrap it around the TV. Then you do the same on the other side.
Now comes the hard part. How are you going to cut the circle in the tile?
Okay, Bob, we insert the tile.
Good thing they're flexible.
Well, it makes it a lot easier moving. Now, I set my ladder back a little, and I take my pencil, and I'm going to scribe a circle on the old housing.
That's a neat way of marking it, Mike. How are you going to cut it?
Well, I'm going to use the keyhole saw. It has a tendency to tear. You have to be exact.
Nice.
Now I have a perfect circle, Bob.
Yep. Okay, we can put that back.
I get this up. It should line up perfect.
It certainly does. What's next, Mike?
Okay. Now I drop the lamp holder through.
Yeah.
Deb, can I have the recessed housing?
Okay.
All right, now you
How
take
do those
this,
two connect?
spring-loaded on each side.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Just insert it into the insert. You heard him?
Yeah, so there's no screws to drive or anything to make that connection.
Now, what holds the housing up then?
Now, as you slide the housing up in, there are 4 spring tension screws. And
so it's held by tension.
Holds it nice and tight. Bob, turn the switch when I tell you.
What's that?
All right, Bob, turn the switch on.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Now we got a
We
light.
have a down light.
Mike, thanks a lot for
Beautiful.
showing us all the tricks of the trade.
Anytime, Bob.
Easy.
Okay. Tell me if I'm going too fast.
No, just watch the top there.
All right.
Okay, I'm dying to see how this is going to look in here.
Just put it right here. Okay.
No longer just a hall, huh?
No, Bob, this is a reproduction of a deacon's bench, and I just like the idea of going into this room, the feeling of welcome. It's a good spot to rest a basket, your mail, whatever. And on the wall, I've used a dried flower wreath, and I've used a couple of these throughout the room. I think they're nice because they last a long time, they add nature to the decorating scheme, and I think they're interesting, too.
They're elegant. Now, in my house, this could serve as a naughty boy bench, too.
That's right.
Right? It's
I
terrific.
tell you, just if you want to dream a little bit, because I know sometimes we're trying to get as much function out of a hallway as we can. This could be used for dinner for 2 or 3 by using one of the gate leg tables.
Oh, and moving
Why
the bench
not?
out of the way.
Get away from it all, come down and dine out.
Sure. Well, listen, Joe, I think you've done a terrific job.
Thank you.
I think
been
it's
fun.
time for us to get together with Ben and Debbie and find out what they think about
Okay.
the family room.
Oh, I can't wait.
Oh,
It's like Christmas morning.
Oh, fantastic.
beautiful. Table.
Well, what do you think?
Oh, this is gorgeous.
Wow.
Really
It
came
really
together
is.
well, didn't it?
Big difference, huh?
All the small
Definitely.
pieces
Look
put
at
together look beautiful.
Yeah, Joe has
Oh,
done
I
a
love
terrific
the
job of
table.
arranging
Yes,
stuff for you.
fantastic.
Yeah, he's
Really
got this is the
fantastic.
children's side, no
Yep.
dangerous furniture here.
The
He's already put
storage.
away some of their toys.
Norm did a great job here.
Yeah, and everything's out on display.
Yeah, fantastic.
Then
I
over
love
here,
the picture. Looks well there.
yeah, it looks beautiful against the textured brick. Then
Oh.
over
This is
here,
our section.
that's your section. That's your half of the room. And of course, there's a recliner here that I'd like to borrow
That's
for a
mine.
few minutes.
You
This is
can
my
use it.
last visit here. Well, what do you think, guys?
Oh, I
If you
think.
had to do it over again, would you do it over again?
Oh,
We have a
can you
little
give
time
us a
off?
weekend off, maybe?
You haven't had a weekend off in quite a few.
We haven't.
We've been here for 5 half hours on television, but in the real world, how many weeks have you been working on all this?
Over 8.
Over 8, yes.
So how many hours does that figure out to be?
Between us, 400 to 500, we figured.
That's a
Hours.
lot of time. You've done a marvelous job, too. Your workmanship has been very good, but 400 to 500 hours are worth $4,000 to $5,000.
At a minimum.
Easy.
Yeah.
So you've saved yourself that much. But what does the checkbook say? How much has gone out?
Well, I'll let Ben give the news
Debbie
on that.
recorded, and I kept it. We've put out of our pocket about $8,600. And if you count our labor and a few extras, we definitely saved over 40% by doing it ourselves with help.
Now, you haven't gotten the bill for the furniture yet, but
No,
still,
we haven't.
The real work, you've done very well.
We have.
Congratulations.
Presentation of This Old House is made possible by Weyerhaeuser, providers of building materials, services, and other products that help Americans live better at the same address. Weyerhaeuser.
Thanks for joining us for this special edition of This Old House. And our thanks if you're one of the millions of viewers who help pay for these broadcasts here on public television. We're counting on you to help keep this station in good financial health. So if you haven't made a contribution yet, please call now and make your pledge.
Local broadcast of this program is made possible in part by Wilson Paints, Harrison Avenue at Queen City, for all your interior and exterior painting needs. The Wilson Paint Company since 1907.
Well, Tina, this is it.
This is the last one.
break.
That's
And
it.
if you want this wonderful book, practically for free, by the way.
Is for free, really.
Yeah,
more or less. You
yeah.
should say, because if you call in and you become a member at the $100 level, you'll get the book, plus you'll get 2 $50 certificates for American Airlines, which you can use on any American Airlines ticket for over $325.
Right.
You could use it on that, and you get the book, plus you become a member of WCET.
And you'll get options for 12 months to your home.
That's right.
And you'll know that you're supporting great programs.
That's exactly right.
Should all give you a warm, fuzzy feeling. So you really ought to be running to the phone, because this is the last break where this offer is going to be good. This book is on this break only. We hope, by the way, you enjoyed the program. I thought it was just great.
I thought it was great, and especially the basement, because as I said earlier, we're remodeling our basement, and I just saw the ideas that they had, and they were really great.
Great, fantastic.
Yeah, and I want to know also, have you been reading this book on how to do
No, but
repairs
I'm
yourself?
going to read it.
I think it would be a good idea for us.
When Bill Strassel called before, oh my God! When he called before and said I should not saw anymore, I think he was right. But I'm not going to do that anymore.
That's a good idea.
I'm finished with it for the day.
That's a good idea. I think we're running out of bandages.
But you want to call right now, because right now you get the 2 American Airlines certificates worth $50 each. That's $100.
That's right.
For a $100 pledge, so you get your money right back, and you get the book. We think this book's probably retail for about $14.95, $15.
At least,
like
I would think.
Yeah.
And it gives such details as to what you need to know. But it's good for the everyday person. I mean, every person can read it. I could read it and learn how to do a lot of different things on my own without paying the outrageous cost to have someone come in and do it for you. Of course, it would be nice if we had Norm and Bob there every single week, but we bring you this old house every single week. So you could read the book and you could watch this old house and you'd learn how to do it on your own.
It's got 1,200 drawings in it, 475 pages. It's a great book. Watching them do that, however, since I've done some of that work, there's some of those things I would hire out because the professionals could do that.
That's true.
And I'll say the fun stuff.
That's right. You'd end up wasting your money trying to do it yourself and then hiring somebody.
Eyewitness accounts document the tragedy of Hitler's infamous Night of the Hummingbird. Viewer discretion is advised. Next.
For the 8th consecutive year, the National Geographic specials are made possible by the Gulf Oil Corporation.
Saturday Night Cinema, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers team up with songs by Gershwin to dance their way into your heart in Shall We Dance? Plus, Clifford Evans portrays William Penn's fight for religious freedom from his trial in England to the founding of the colony that bears his name in Courageous Mr. Penn. Shall We Dance and Courageous Mr. Penn. Double feature entertainment on Saturday Night Cinema. Watch it on WCET TV Saturday night at 8.